Chun borrows a mountain of cash from the mafia, buys the most expensive ice creams, hires the most expensive contractor to build his safe house because only he knows that the apocalypse is coming, so there won't be any need to pay anyone back. Lujing Pedestrian Street, March 2nd, 2030. The place was unusually quiet, and inside a dim little room off the street, someone's voice cut through the silence, asking a kid if he had any idea what borrowing 5 million from him really meant. When the lights flicked on, the speaker revealed himself, Zhang Yang, the boss of the Dahai gang and the man behind the Luchong underground bank. The kid standing before him was clearly nervous. He kept insisting that he understood that as long as brother Zhang was willing to lend, even high interest was fine. Behind Zhang, a row of bodyguards stood like carved statues, each one more intimidating than the last. Zhang Yang calmly named his terms: 4% interest, 5 million borrowed, 7 million due in half a year. He told the boy to write the IOU for 7 million and hand over collateral of equal value. Chun, the kid, hurriedly produced a document, the deed to his house. Zhang glanced at it and commented aloud that the place was old and only worth around 3 or 4 million at best. But in his mind, he was already laughing. A large flat over 140 square meters being used as collateral for a loan shark? A fat sheep had practically walked into his hands. Then he casually said that 5 million couldn't be lent out based solely on that house. The moment Chun heard that, he panicked, clasping his hands together as if praying. He begged not to lose the deal, saying 4 million would work too, that a fortune-telling master claimed his luck was soaring, and he'd surely earn several times the amount back. Zhang lowered the offer to 3.5 million, pretending it was the highest he could go. Inwardly, he sneered at how easily a young gambler could be hooked. Chan, however, reacted as if he'd just been saved from drowning, thanking Zhang with overwhelming enthusiasm and promising to repay him soon. Zhang then adjusted the final terms: repay 4.9 million in 3 months, or the house would automatically belong to him. If Chen agreed, he could write the IOU immediately and receive the funds within 3 days. Chun said there was no problem, just that he had one condition of his own. The moment he said that, Zhang's curiosity sharpened, and he leaned in to listen. 10 minutes later, Chun walked out of the room with a bright, satisfied smile on his face. From inside the room, a cheerful voice called out, thanking Chun for his patronage and telling him to take care. On his phone screen, a massive deposit lit up. Ding! Mobile account received 3.5 million yuan. Chun couldn't hold back the quiet laughter in his mind. To him, the whole situation was almost comical. In a month, the apocalypse would descend. Who in their right mind would still bother paying back a loan at that point? With the money finally in his hands, his thoughts immediately shifted to preparation. He had no intention of reliving the nightmare from his past life. Back then, a catastrophic natural disaster had struck Blue Star, reshaping the entire planet's ecosystem. Intense solar radiation pushed global temperatures to a horrifying average of 50 degrees Celsius, plunging humanity into a high-temperature apocalypse that lasted 30 days. Humans, animals, nothing survived unscathed. The world had been thrown into chaos. Meanwhile, back in the underground bank, Zhang Yang was laughing to himself. To secure the money quickly, he'd even dared to raise the interest, and he felt no shame about it. In his eyes, gamblers hardly deserved a home. One of his men cautiously pointed out that Chen's house was worth over 4 million, yet they'd pushed it to 3.5, and Chen accepted instantly. Maybe it was a trap, but Zhang simply waved it off. He claimed he'd seen countless gamblers, people who would trade even their families for cash. What was a house to someone like that? He joked that the world was full of good people who paid extra interest without complaint. Chen, meanwhile, had his own private thoughts. He remembered all too vividly how he had once boasted, "You think you can scam me? I'm the man who borrowed from every loan shark in Luoyang in a single day. Interest rates? I laugh at them. Once the money's in my hands, don't even dream of getting it back." He knew exactly what was coming. After the apocalypse, the earth dried up, vegetation withered, creatures mutated, and society crumbled. Supplies became so scarce that people threw away whatever morals they had left just to secure a bit of food or water. Those who possessed resources were like kings. Even billionaires and celebrities ended up begging for a hot sausage or a sip of clean water. Those who failed to adapt were left to wander the dead streets until they met their miserable end. But this time was different. He had been reborn. He had foreknowledge. And before disaster arrived, there was still enough time. Time to prepare, time to build, and time to make sure he would never suffer like he once had. Chun eventually wandered past a group of girls who were giggling together, and the sight caught his attention. He recognized the boxes in their hands and immediately thought to himself that this must be the legendary ice cream assassin, the kind of luxury treat said to be even pricier than the so-called noble of ice creams. He stared for a moment, remembering how, in his past life, he never dared buy one for himself. Instead, he had wasted money treating that woman Lu wenching to it again and again. Feeding such high-end ice cream to her felt more wasteful than feeding it to a dog. The more he thought about it, the more his chest tightened. Fine then, this time he was going to enjoy it. Without hesitation, he marched straight in and cut the line, stunning the group of girls behind him. He raised his voice and called out, "Hello! Give me 10 of every type of ice cream you have. Thanks." The girls were left blinking in disbelief. Whispers rippled through them. Was he serious? Could he even afford it? And wasn't he ridiculously handsome while ordering? Their impressions shifted instantly, and their eyes practically sparkled at him after such a bold display. The receptionist, however, had her own concerns. She thought the very thing they had been giggling about earlier, this ice cream assassin, wasn't cheap. And this handsome guy didn't look like someone from a wealthy family. She hesitantly asked again if he was serious, reminding him that 10 of each category would exceed 20,000 yuan. Chun simply kept a straight face. One of the girls clicked her tongue and mocked him outright, saying that with those shabby clothes, if he could really afford it, she would kowtow to him right there in public. Chun glanced at her calmly and asked whether she meant those words. She fired back, asking if he seriously expected her to kowtow to him and what level he thought he was to act so pretentious. Chen's smirk only widened. He told her he had tried to give her a way out, but she had insisted on jumping in herself. Now she was definitely kowtowing today. Even Jesus couldn't stop it. He declared that much with confidence. The girl sputtered in frustration, completely thrown off. Chun then turned back to the counter, still wearing that amused smirk, and told the staff to package all the ice cream by portion. He would take everything. He lifted his phone and showed the completed payment transaction. The receptionist nearly froze on the spot. After staring at the screen, she stammered that she needed to call the manager and asked him to wait a moment. The manager hurried out the moment he heard the commotion. Introducing himself as Fei Qi, he politely asked what Mr. Chen needed. Chun glanced around the store and casually told him to calculate the total cost of all the ice cream in the shop, adding that they didn't need to stay open for business today. Manager Fei froze for a second, then quickly checked his tablet. With a respectful bow, he asked Chun to wait a moment. Inside, however, his thoughts were spinning. Who exactly was this young master? With a single sentence, he had practically covered the store's entire monthly turnover. Despite the luxury prices, very few people actually bought these ice creams. Most customers only looked. When the calculations were done, Fei Qi reported that the items currently on display were worth about 70,000 yuan, and counting the inventory in storage, the total value reached around 1 million. Chun only smirked at the number. In his mind, it wasn't expensive at all. If the apocalypse was coming anyway, there was no harm in clearing out their entire inventory. Worst case, he could just stay home and eat ice cream during doomsday. He told Manager Fei he would transfer a deposit of 300,000 yuan first, then instructed him to deliver all the ice cream in storage to the address he provided. Manager Fei promised to handle everything personally. Chun then turned to the group of stunned girls and generously told them to choose whatever ice cream they wanted. The entire shop was on him today. Chaos immediately broke out. The girls squealed, gushed, and practically sparkled with excitement. One shrieked that it was amazing. Another declared that he was insanely rich. Another sighed that the more she looked at him, the more handsome he seemed. But Chun had one more thing to settle. He glanced at the girl who had mocked him earlier and calmly reminded her that the offer didn't apply to her. He was still waiting for her kowtow. The color drained from her face. Embarrassed and flustered, she stammered before finally bending as low as she could, wishing she had never opened her mouth in the first place. When everything was settled, the sun dipped toward the horizon, marking what had turned out to be a rather beautiful day for Chun. He sat on a bench, enjoying one of his newly acquired ice creams. As expected from an assassin, the taste and texture were phenomenal. He then took out a certain item, one that allowed anything stored inside to remain in perfect condition forever. That meant fresh ice cream anytime he wanted. With such a treasure, he thought even celebrities and young models could be summoned with a snap of his fingers. The thought alone made him grin. He hadn't expected it, but even his ability had been reborn with him. In his past life, abilities had only begun awakening one after another after the apocalyptic disaster struck. The fact that his had surfaced early this time was something he couldn't fully explain, but he knew one thing for certain: it would become his greatest trump card from now on. He let out a quiet sigh, thinking about how many tasks still lay ahead of him. Just as he was gathering his thoughts, his phone suddenly rang. The ringtone lit up the screen with the words, "Ring ring, the little fairy is calling." The moment he saw it, a wave of unpleasant memories surged up. The caller ID couldn't have been more irritating: Lu Wenqing. He clicked his tongue and muttered to himself that of all people, it had to be her. What rotten timing. He had been having such a good day. Chun picked up the phone while murmuring Lu Wenqing's name. The moment he did, a wave of memories surged up, memories of how, after his parents passed away, she had appeared in his life like a savior. Back then, he had been foolish enough to believe she was his light, never realizing she had been eyeing nothing more than the small inheritance his parents left behind. He remembered how she used to lean close and relay what her mother supposedly said, that if he wanted to marry her, the fully paid apartment in the city center had to be put under her name, along with a bride price of 880,000 yuan. To him now, it was obvious she had been a bottomless pit, reaching out again and again until his savings were drained. She always justified it by claiming it was all for their little family, and even encouraged him to sell his family's old house, saying it was outdated anyway. Eventually, she had even pushed to sell the ancestral home passed down for generations just to secure that luxury apartment she wanted. He recalled a moment later in their relationship when he had been shoved to the ground while she introduced him to a so-called young master, saying he was the person she had mentioned, the one who supposedly met the requirements for special materials. That was the instant he finally understood the truth. During the apocalypse, he had done everything he could to protect her, but she had sold him out to a stronger backer without hesitation. The backer had taken one glance at him and commented that there was nothing special about him, wondering aloud if they really needed to bother devouring someone like that. In the end, he hadn't even left behind a complete corpse. Now, with a second chance in hand, Chun simply smirked to himself. Since Lu Wenqing had come looking for him on her own, he felt it was only right to settle the old score. Later, at a high-end hotel, he answered her call with an affectionate tone, asking what was wrong. She explained that she had been out with friends and had accidentally lost a gold necklace she loved, claiming she was heartbroken over it. Chun immediately acted as though buying another was the obvious solution, but she insisted one wouldn't be enough and told him to buy 10, so she could rotate them. He played along, repeating her demand and pretending to agree easily. She asked when he had become so generous, and he replied that he had recently been lucky. He told her he had invested in virtual currency and made a small profit, so it was only natural to spend money on her. Hearing that, she sounded worried, asking if he had fallen for some scam, saying virtual currency seemed strange to her. Chun went on to explain that whether the investment was a scam or not didn't matter. She could simply watch whether he made money in the next round. He claimed that playing small had become boring and that he intended to go big this time by borrowing a substantial principal to invest even more. Since the loan required a witness, he asked her to help out, promising that once it was approved, he would give her 5% of the loan amount as compensation for her trouble. Just as he was speaking, a man's irritated voice sounded in the background, asking why she was taking so long to get ready. Lu immediately hurried to him, calling him honey and saying she would be done soon. Inwardly, however, she was comparing the profits. Spending a night with the older man earned her only 5,000 yuan, while simply signing a paper for Chun could earn her 50,000. To her, the risk seemed non-existent. It was just a signature, and she believed Chun Xiao to be too timid to ever trick her. Once the call ended, Chun thought to himself that he would be waiting for Lu Wenqing. After that, he shifted his focus to preparations, deciding it was time to build a fortress. He planned to turn the place into a structure of iron and copper within a month. He wanted bulletproof composite glass installed on all windows, along with hidden burglar bars, walls reinforced into 3-meter-thick bulletproof exteriors, and seismic fortification capable of withstanding intensity level 8 quakes. He continued listing requirements: 3-meter security glass, a full rooftop covered in solar panels with an independent energy system, air purification and filtration capable of blocking external toxins, an autonomous ecosystem with a 72-hour oxygen supply and internal water cycling devices, explosion-proof doors, and an access control system combining biometric and mechanical verification. The contractor, listening to all this, began to sweat, overwhelmed by the sheer scale of the demands. Inwardly, he wondered whether Chun was some kind of doomsday prepper suffering from apocalypse delusions, or whether he had simply watched too many sci-fi movies. Before he could say anything, Chun stepped closer with a serious expression and asked whether it couldn't be done, reminding him that his resume claimed he was a defense specialist who had designed safe rooms for top tycoons. The contractor tentatively mentioned that Mr. Chen's requirements were extremely unique and high-end, though the budget might be an issue. Inwardly, however, he was thrilled, already assuming Chun was another wealthy man brainwashed by doomsday theories, someone with money to burn. Before he could say more, Chun displayed a hefty sum and stated that he would put down a 1 million yuan deposit, and the contractor could name the remaining balance himself. The contractor was stunned. Being allowed to name the price sounded unreal, and in his mind he was already celebrating his luck, convinced he had just met a rich fool who could fund his path to financial freedom in one go. Chun shook his hand enthusiastically, adding that he valued materials and quality above all else, and everything needed to pass inspection. The contractor promised confidently that there would be no problem, assuring Chun that the place would be built solid as a rock. Meanwhile, both men were thinking the exact opposite of what they were saying. Chun was silently telling himself that once the apocalypse arrived, the contractor wouldn't even be able to find him, let alone collect any remaining payment. The contractor, on the other hand, was already planning how thoroughly he was going to overcharge him. Both sides were preparing to rip each other off without the slightest guilt. Later, Chun noted to himself that the fortress construction was settled. The next step was gathering supplies, medicine, food, and daily necessities would be easy to acquire. The real threat in the apocalypse wasn't nature but the human heart after society collapsed. Cold weapons could be bought at any hardware store, but firearms, those capable of delivering fatal blows, were far more difficult to obtain. He pulled out his phone and began searching for underground channels that dealt in such items. After scrolling for a while, one particular message caught his attention. The seller claimed to have first-hand sources and access to hidden channels, boasting that there was nothing a buyer could imagine that he couldn't procure. He emphasized honest dealings and safety above all else. Chun immediately sent a reply asking how to purchase. The seller responded that he would send the address privately and instructed Chun to arrive that night at 8 p.m. sharp. Later that evening, Chun made his way to the designated location, noting as he walked that the seller had chosen a place bustling with people. He was still considering the implications when a sudden commotion caught his attention. A girl was sprinting desperately through the crowd, with several men shouting after her. One of them barked at her to stop, while another cursed furiously, demanding she halt. The girl, terrified, kept running. A moment later, she darted behind Chun as if seeking shelter. The pursuers grew even more agitated, one yelling that she should keep running if she dared, and another snarling that she must be tired of living to cheat someone in his territory. The girl pleaded for help, her voice trembling. Chun had originally intended to focus on his own plans for the night, but the moment he heard her voice and saw her face clearly, he froze. It was Lu Wenqing. He couldn't understand how she had ended up in a place like this. The sight left him momentarily stunned, unable to believe what he was seeing. One of the men managed to grab the girl and warn Chun not to come any closer. The girl was crying uncontrollably, and Chan, surprised, realized he recognized her. It was Li Yuyu, the top student goddess from his middle school days, the girl admired by countless boys. He couldn't understand how someone like her had ended up in such a situation. While he tried to process it, one of the thugs demanded that she hand over the money and said she shouldn't even think about leaving otherwise. She kept crying as more of the men gathered behind their leader, clearly waiting their turn. One of them suggested they stop wasting time. If she couldn't repay the money, she could pay in other ways instead, laughing crudely. Chen's expression darkened, and he ordered them to let her go. The thugs finally turned their attention to him. Their grip on the girl didn't loosen, and one of them, angrier than the rest, stepped forward with clenched fists, demanding to know where this reckless kid had come from. He mocked Chun for trying to play the hero and threatened to cripple him first. The moment he swung, Chun easily avoided the punch, grabbed the man's arm, and twisted it until the thug cried out in pain. Then, with a single strike to the face, Chun sent him flying. Dust and smoke rose around them as Chun stood there, unfazed. Inwardly, he noted with surprise that the strange system assisting him was something he had never possessed in his previous life. Li Yuyu also recognized him, calling out his name in disbelief. But the man still restraining her tightened his hold and warned Chun not to move or he would kill her. Before the threat even finished leaving his mouth, Chun hurled a stone straight at the man's forehead, knocking him backward. The remaining thugs hesitated, suddenly intimidated. A moment later, another young man rushed into the scene, scolding them loudly for ganging up on a girl and asking where their shame had gone. The thugs instantly cursed at him for interfering and charged. Chun and the newcomer fought side by side without needing to exchange a single word. When someone attacked from the front, Chun took him down with a punch. When someone tried to ambush from behind, the other guy blocked and countered. One by one, the punks collapsed, and even when they were down, Chun made sure to kick them away to keep them from getting up again. When the last of them fell, Chun gave a cold command for them to scram. At that moment, a notification echoed in his mind. Fear +1, panic +1, severe pain +1, despair +1, humiliation +1. Negative emotion value exceeded 10 for the first time. Spatial expansion authority unlocked. While the punks stumbled away in fear, another prompt echoed in Chen's mind, reminding him to harvest diligently so the ability could grow stronger. Chun found the concept of collecting negative emotions amusing and mentally noted how interesting this new power was. Li Yuyu, still shaken, sat on the ground and thanked him, saying she hadn't expected to meet him there. Chun helped her up gently, asked if she was hurt, and even handed her something to cover herself with. She expressed her gratitude again, but said she had urgent matters to take care of and needed to leave quickly. Chun simply reminded her to be careful. The young man who had rushed in earlier approached him enthusiastically, praising his hero saving the beauty moment and introducing himself as Mukong. When Chen heard the name, he realized fate had saved him some trouble. Mukong was exactly the person he had arranged to meet. Mukong was surprised and called it destiny, then excitedly struck a pose and said, "Sky King covers Earth Tiger." Chun responded by calling him a fool. Mukong froze, completely thrown off. A series of notifications immediately appeared in Chen's mind: dumbfounded +1, dazed +1, awkwardness +1. Chen cleared his throat and tried to ease the moment by responding with another nonsense phrase, saying he meant it as a joke to lighten the mood. He even mimicked the silly pose to reduce Mu Kang's embarrassment. Mu Kang burst out laughing, calling Chen unbelievable, and then motioned for him to follow. They moved into a secluded area where Mu Kang opened a box filled with firearms. He explained that they were Russian-made, durable and reliable, but warned that they didn't come with many bullets, so Chun would need to use them wisely. Since Chun seemed skilled and interesting, Mu Kang offered him a friendship price, saying it was his way of forming a connection. Chun accepted and thanked him. Mu Kang added that Chen's movements suggested he was an expert, and if there were no further questions, they could finalize the deal. But before he could finish, Chun casually asked whether the gun came with a silencer, whether there was a warranty card, and if Mu Kang could throw in an extra box of bullets. Mu Kang was speechless. Internally, he wondered if Chun even understood what a friendship price meant. Items like these usually sparked bidding wars on the black market, often selling for twice the cost, and this guy was asking for warranties and freebies as if he were buying home appliances. Mu Kang felt himself grow more and more frustrated, thinking Chun might as well just rob him. A new notification flickered through Chen's mind, noting the spike in negative emotions: shock +1, heartache +1, speechless +1. Seeing Mu Kang's face twist in pain, Chun quickly told him not to worry about it. If the extras weren't possible, he said they could forget it. He added that they would just follow the price already agreed on, and that he would transfer the money immediately. Inwardly, Chun marked the deal as complete. He now had supplies, weapons, and the beginnings of a fortress. Only one final piece remained. Later that night, inside an extravagant hotel suite, a woman in a red dress stood by the window, bathed in moonlight. When she turned, Chun wrapped an arm around her and complained that she had taken too long and kept him waiting on sore legs. Lu Wenqing asked whether the thing he mentioned was truly risk-free. Chun reassured her sweetly, claiming it was only a formality, and that he loved her too much to ever scam her. In her mind, however, Lu dismissed any notion of danger. She told herself that this pathetic simp nearly sold his own blood once just to buy her a handbag. He was far too busy worshipping her to dare deceive her. Later, at Boss Zhang's office, Zhang Yang praised her decisiveness and even complimented her handwriting as she signed the contract. She handed the documents back without a second thought. Zhang, on the other hand, was practically smirking inside. He thought she genuinely believed she was only acting as a guarantor, when in truth, the moment she signed, the debt legally became hers. And when she inevitably failed to repay it, he had other methods in mind for collecting, methods he was already imagining with satisfaction. Lu Wenqing continued watching him smugly, unaware of the trap she'd walked into. Meanwhile, Chun silently observed everything, thinking to himself that she was signing her own indenture contract. Her greed, foolishness, and self-confidence would end up paying off the remainder of his safe house's construction costs perfectly. Everything had gone smoother than he expected, and he silently thanked her. A short while later, the contractor proudly showed Chun the completed safe house. He assured Chen that every material used met the highest military standards: heat insulation, soundproofing, explosion-proofing, drill-proofing, even the structural strength to withstand multiple small-scale nuclear shockwaves. Chun acknowledged the quality and thanked him. The contractor laughed heartily and told Chun to call him whenever he needed more work. Finally, inside the finished safe house, Chun took a moment to sit down and relax. Just then, a broadcast echoed from his screen. Affected by unprecedented super-strong solar flare activity, the entire globe will experience continuous extreme high-temperature weather. The news report continued, warning that temperatures across many regions were expected to break historical records and urging all citizens to take immediate protective measures. Chun listened quietly, then picked up the gun lying beside him. He remarked to himself that the moment had finally arrived. Outside his reinforced walls, the world was beginning to ignite, heat waves surging, flames blooming across cities, and panic spreading everywhere. He walked to the window and watched as the world outside descended into burning chaos. He stood watching the world burn, secure and ready for whatever came next. The news anchor continued reporting that a super-strong solar flare had erupted, causing violent disturbances in Earth's ionosphere. Extreme high-temperature phenomena were already appearing across the globe, with daytime highs expected to reach as much as 45 degrees Celsius. Citizens were advised to take heatstroke precautions and avoid going outside at noon unless absolutely necessary. Chun listened without surprise. He already knew this was coming. In his mind, he noted that the temperature had begun to rise, but this was only the beginning. Compared to his past life, It even felt like things were escalating faster and more brutally this time. Outside, panic spread among ordinary people. Everyone wanted to hide indoors, yet even inside their homes, the heat was suffocating and unbearable. Someone complained that it was already unbearably hot early in the morning and wondered how long such extreme temperatures would last. Soon, a street loudspeaker crackled to life. A vendor loudly warned his neighbors that the weather was deadly and claimed he had heard the temperature would keep rising next week. He shouted about supply shortages, saying water and electricity would soon become scarce, and urged everyone to stock up immediately or risk having nothing to drink later. He even claimed this was his final batch of goods. Yet inwardly, the man was delighted. To him, the heat wave was practically money knocking at his door, and he would be a fool not to seize the opportunity to get rich. Nearby, a woman complained that his melons were priced far too high and asked if he could sell them cheaper. Another woman examined the melons, which looked plump and juicy. Seeing them, the vendor suddenly became overly enthusiastic, praising their beauty and eagerly approaching them. He boasted about how sweet the melons were and offered to cut one open for a taste. If they bought two, he promised a discount and even threw in a free pack of tissues. The women listened cautiously, growing increasingly uncomfortable as the man leaned in closer and became overly familiar. He pushed his melons toward them, even hinting that if the nights stayed hot, they could come by his place to cool off. Nervous, one of the women backed away and quickly said they would just buy one. But the vendor refused to give up, stepping closer again and urging them to buy more and stock up, insisting that with weather like this, no one could guarantee there would be anything left to sell tomorrow. A few more people soon gathered around the stall. Among them was an elderly man who politely asked whether the boss could sell the water a little cheaper. The moment the vendor saw him, his expression turned ugly. He snapped that his was a small business and that there would be absolutely no bargaining, clearly eager to chase the old man away. Chun stood nearby, watching the scene unfold, and immediately recognized the man. He inwardly clicked his tongue, realizing it was Li Dafu. Memories from his past life surfaced instantly. This man had once made his life miserable. Back then, Li Dafu had loved shouting in public, accusing him of stealing and calling people over to watch, even when Chun had only tried to pick up something that had fallen and return it. Chun remembered desperately trying to explain that he hadn't stolen anything, that he had only seen the item on the ground and wanted to put it back. But Li Dafu had refused to listen, sneering that no one would be that kind-hearted. He had pointed at Chen's shabby clothes and insisted that someone like him couldn't have clean hands, threatening to call the police if he didn't pay up. The surrounding crowd had joined in, looking at Chun with disdain. Some had muttered that someone so young shouldn't be stealing, while others claimed his silence proved his guilt. Even as Chun insisted he hadn't taken anything, no one believed him. Every ounce of humiliation from that day came flooding back. Now, standing here again, Chen's gaze fell on a bag of potato chips marked with a manager's recommendation tag. He picked it up, thinking he might as well eat some. Then, with deliberate calm, he asked Li Dafu whether the chips were made of gold or capable of preventing heatstroke, questioning why they were being sold at such an outrageous price. Li Dafu turned sharply to glare at him. At the same time, a notification appeared in Chen's mind, noting a surge of negative emotion. Disdain +3. The vendor immediately snatched the chips back and shouted at Chan to get lost if he couldn't afford them, demanding to know whether he could compensate them if he damaged the goods. Another notification followed, irritation +6. Chun merely smiled faintly and remarked that Li Dafu was holding on to so many treasures that he wondered whether the man could even sleep at night, suggesting he should be careful. After all, things had a way of getting stolen. Boss Lee suddenly felt as if he'd been cursed and flew into a rage, demanding to know who Chun was trying to hex. He threatened to beat him up, sneering that the heat must have fried his brain. Chun, however, calmly told him to settle down and casually asked whether he'd been suffering lately from insomnia, vivid dreams, weakness, and night sweats. That question caught Boss Lee off guard. He muttered that he did have some of those symptoms and even wondered if there might be a feng shui issue with his warehouse. Chun hushed him confidently, saying he'd known it all along and pointing out that Boss Lee's yin-tang looked dark. He explained that it was a typical case of deficiency. That was enough to completely set Boss Lee off. He cursed Chun back, shouting that Chun and his entire family were the ones with deficiencies and swung a fist at him. Chun easily dodged the punch. He casually picked up a lollipop, popped it into his mouth, and advised Boss Lee to take better care of his health. He warned that excessive anger damaged the body, especially someone in Boss Lee's condition. As he spoke, he tossed a few coins onto the ground and coldly remarked that if Boss Lee didn't pay attention, he might die young. He then turned away, savoring the sweetness of the lollipop, leaving Boss Lee staring at the money on the ground. A notification immediately rang out in Chen's mind, detected strong negative emotion, anger +20. As night fell, a stray cat passed through the streets with something clutched in its mouth. Inside his safe house, Chen gazed at the night sky and reflected on his past life, remembering how he had swallowed his anger and allowed others to trample him. This time, he intended to reclaim everything with interest. He then recalled that he had unlocked spatial expansion earlier, and the emotions Lee Dafu had just provided were perfectly sufficient to use it. A notification followed, consumed negative emotion, 20. Storage space expanded to 200 cubic meters. An unseen aura enveloped Chun, and for a brief moment, it felt as though his hand brushed against a doorway leading into another dimension. When dawn arrived, the heat was already overwhelming. Even sparrows struggled under the rising temperature. On the street below, Boss Lee returned to his stall and froze. Wherever he looked, there was only one thing waiting for him: nothing. Stunned, he shouted in disbelief, demanding to know where all his goods had gone and who could have done this. From the safety of his fortified home, Chun calmly sipped his soda as another notification appeared: negative emotion plus 66. The drink tasted great, but he knew this was only the beginning. Much more was yet to come. Boss Lee completely lost it. He ran around his store in a panic, shouting and cursing, demanding to know who had stolen his goods. He collapsed to the ground, almost crying, unable to accept what had happened. To him, this was worse than the apocalypse itself. The end of the world didn't scare him nearly as much as losing all his stock overnight. The people nearby started whispering among themselves. One person wondered aloud whether Boss Lee had staged everything himself just to jack up prices. Another worried about how they were supposed to survive if even the supermarket was empty. An old woman claimed she had seen a dark shadow drifting through the area last night, and someone else immediately questioned her, asking if she was sure. Boss Lee, however, refused to believe any of it. He shouted that it was impossible, that there was no such thing as ghosts. But even as he yelled, notifications silently stacked up in Chen's mind. Strong negative emotion detected. Anger plus 12, fear plus 3, suspicion plus 4. Chan stood nearby, watching everything unfold like a spectator at a show. He casually ate his snacks, finding that snacks tasted especially good when paired with other people's suffering. With a faint smile, he commented to himself that Lee Dafu's emotional output was impressively stable. As he reached into the bag again, he deliberately let the packaging show. The moment Boss Lee saw it, his eyes nearly popped out of their sockets. He screamed that those were his goods and charged forward like a madman. Chun calmly raised the bag and asked whether the chips were made of gold or somehow able to prevent heatstroke, since they were being sold at such an outrageous price. Boss Lee immediately recognized him and roared in fury. Chun continued casually, asking if Boss Lee could really sleep peacefully while hoarding so many treasures, warning him to be careful or thieves might target him. Boss Lee finally snapped, grabbing at Chan and demanding to know where he got the chips, accusing him of theft while shaking with rage. Chun took a step back, pretending to be startled, and calmly reminded him that accusations required evidence. He even pointed out how strange it was that the entire supermarket was empty now, not even a single snack left behind. Then, with an almost innocent tone, he offered the half-eaten bag in his hand, asking if Boss Lee would like it. Boss Lee stood there trembling, his face pale with fury and disbelief, completely at a loss for words. Boss Lee exploded in anger, shouting that Chun had cursed him and that now all his goods were gone. He accused Chun of being the thief and demanded an explanation. In his mind, even if Chun hadn't actually stolen anything, he could still squeeze something out of him to make up for the loss. At the very least, he could use him as a scapegoat. Another notification quietly appeared in Chen's vision. Strong negative emotion detected. Anger plus 18. Chun, however, remained calm. He casually pointed out that other stores also sold the same chips and asked why Boss Lee was so sure it had to be him. He reminded everyone that the shelves were already empty when he arrived. If anyone wanted proof, they could check the surveillance or search his place. He even added that if they found any of Boss Lee's goods there, he would compensate tenfold. That sentence immediately made the surrounding onlookers murmur. Some pointed out that other shops also sold the same brand. Others recalled that Boss Lee had been complaining about prices only the day before. The atmosphere quickly shifted. Boss Lee felt his scalp tingle. Something wasn't right. How had this kid suddenly turned the situation around so cleanly? Before he could think further, Chun calmly added that if nothing was found, then the generator sitting behind the shop would belong to him as compensation. Furious and cornered, Boss Lee agreed on the spot, convinced that Chun was bluffing. He grabbed Chun and dragged him along, declaring that once the truth came out, he would see how smug Chun still felt. When they reached Chen's residence, the crowd gasped. The moment the door opened, they were greeted by a scene completely beyond expectations. The interior looked nothing like a normal home. Everything was neat, fortified, and shockingly well stocked. Expensive equipment lined the walls, sealed supplies were stacked neatly, and even large energy units were visible. Whispers broke out immediately. So he was hiding this much wealth? When did he become this rich? This looks like a fortress. Even Boss Lee froze in place. His eyes widened as he stared at the interior, disbelief washing over his face. This wasn't a home, it was a bunker. Chun turned to him calmly and asked if if he was done searching, even offering to let him pry up the floorboards if he wished. Boss Lee's confidence completely collapsed. His face turned pale, and he quickly waved his hands, saying there was no need. He mumbled something about checking other places and tried to leave. But before he could escape, Chun reached out and grabbed his arm, stopping him cold. With a faint smile, Chun reminded him about the agreement they had just made, that if nothing was found, the generator would belong to him. Boss Lee stiffened. His face twisted as he tried to backpedal, claiming it was all a misunderstanding and asking whether things really needed to be taken this far. But the crowd was already watching, and Chen's calm gaze made it clear, this time, there would be no backing out. Chun calmly asked him why he hadn't thought about taking a step back when he was framing others before. At that moment, another notification popped up in Chen's mind. Strong negative emotion detected. Impatience +8. The onlookers began whispering among themselves. Some muttered that a man who couldn't even keep his word deserved what he got. Others scoffed, saying it served him right. Hearing those voices, Li Dafu's face twisted with rage. He snapped back, accusing Chun of going too far and shouting that he was giving him face already. Then, without warning, he swung his fist toward Chun. Chun easily blocked the attack and twisted the man's arm in one clean motion. A sharp cry rang out as Li Dafu dropped to the ground, clutching his hand in agony. A new notification appeared. Strong negative emotion detected. Pain +73. Gritting his teeth, Li Dafu finally gave in, shouting that he would move the generator right away and begging Chun to stop. Chun calmly reminded him to hurry, pointing out that once the temperature rose further, going outside would become impossible. He added coolly that, without a generator, surviving the coming days would be difficult. Another wave of emotional data poured in. Humiliation +30, pain +86, fear +101. Chun watched without expression, knowing everything was unfolding exactly as planned. Just as things settled, his phone rang again. It was Lu Wenjing. Her voice sounded anxious as she said that several unfamiliar men had been following her for the past few days. They looked like debt collectors, and she didn't understand why. Wasn't she just signing something before? Chin already knew the answer. He simply smiled faintly to himself, standing quietly as he listened. This too was part of the plan, and it was only just beginning. There is more to come. The bad girl demanded to know why people from the Dahai gang were looking for her and asked if Chun had lied to her. She sounded angry and suspicious. Chun replied calmly, telling her not to overthink it. He said he had done so much for her and poured his heart out, so how could he possibly lie? Hearing her doubt him made him sound hurt, at least on the surface. Inside, however, he was thinking that those Dahai gang idiots were even more impatient than he expected. He then asked her if the people following her knew where she lived and what exactly they had said. The bad girl told him they didn't know her address yet, and that she had taken side roads to shake them off. She warned him not to play tricks on her and demanded to know what was really going on. Chun reassured her, saying she was overthinking things and that she probably mistook someone else for them. As he spoke, he deliberately let her see the food and supplies around him. The moment she noticed them, her eyes widened in disbelief. She couldn't help asking how he still had so much. Chin didn't explain. He wanted her to see it for herself. He casually told her that he had more than just that. Inside, the bad girl was shocked. With the heat growing worse by the day and supplies becoming scarce, only the rich could afford this kind of food. She started wondering where he had gotten it all. Could it be that he had really struck it big? Chun calmly took a sip of his drink and commented on how good it tasted in this weather. Then he casually ate some premium food right in front of her. When she saw the salmon, her eyes lit up. She couldn't hide her desire and admitted she really wanted some. Chun asked gently whether she had enough to eat where she was staying. She replied that she was scared living alone, saying she constantly felt like someone was watching her. Her voice sounded weak and pitiful, but deep down she was carefully calculating her next move. She then suggested that she could stay with him for a few days, hinting that she could keep him company. Her tone was soft and tempting. Before he could respond, she ended the call. Chun lowered his phone slowly, a faint smile forming on his face. Hook, line, and sinker. Lu Wanjing, you really are too cheap. Chun called her back and told her that the weather was only going to get hotter. He reminded her that she had always said a girl shouldn't casually give out her address, acting all mysterious and refusing to let him visit. Now, though, he told her to send the address over. He said he would go pick her up later, once the temperature dropped a bit. The bad girl immediately changed her attitude. She said that times were different now, that the situation was special. Since he was her boyfriend, who else could she rely on if not him? She quickly sent over the address and told him to come get her. Chun told her to stay put and not wander around, reminding her to be good and wait for him. After hanging up, the bad girl smirked to herself. In her heart, she thought that a simp would always be a simp. Give him a bit of sweetness and he would come running, tail wagging. Meanwhile, Chin already understood everything perfectly. He thought about how she used to act all high and mighty, never letting him even step inside her community. Now, just for a bit of food, she was willingly handing over her address. The contrast almost made him laugh. He put his phone down just as a knock sounded at the door. A woman's voice called out, asking if she could come in. It was Auntie Wong from next door. He opened the door slightly, and she immediately started complaining that her air conditioner had broken and that it was unbearably hot. She said the children couldn't stand it anymore and suggested they come inside for a while, saying neighbors should help each other. Chun looked at her calmly and reminded her how, when he was younger, he and his mother used to pick up plastic bottles downstairs. Back then, she had pointed at them, called them beggars, and even told the security guards to chase them away. The memory clearly made her uncomfortable. She hurriedly said that was a long time ago and accused him of being heartless for holding on to old grudges. Chun nodded lightly and replied that maybe he really was heartless, but at least he had air conditioning now. Then he shut the door in her face. Outside, Auntie Wong continued yelling insults, calling him heartless and even cursing his parents. But Chun didn't care anymore. A notification quietly appeared in his vision. Detected strong negative emotion, anger plus 18. Detected strong negative emotion, anger plus 20. Chun felt nothing but calm. He had long decided that he would only help those who deserved it. Everyone else could fend for themselves. After that, Chun calmly took out his phone, swapped the SIM card, and turned on his computer. He made a call, his tone casual as if discussing something trivial. He told the person on the other end that he knew where Lu Wenjing lived and had already sent the address over. He even added that she lived alone and would be easy to find. Once the call ended, Chun leaned back and looked out the window. The sky outside was still blazing hot, the air heavy and suffocating, yet he felt strangely comfortable. The heat didn't bother him anymore. In fact, compared to the calm spreading through his chest, the outside world felt distant and insignificant. He let out a quiet breath and thought to himself that the real show was finally about to begin. The bad girl was looking in the mirror, admiring her own beauty and feeding her ego. She thought about how soon she'd be able to move into Chun Jiao's air-conditioned room. She reminisced about the kind of life he would give her and thought that only a carefree life like that was worthy of her. She kept daydreaming, completely enjoying herself. Later, she lit one up and continued checking out her belongings. Suddenly, loud knocking started at the door. She went to open it, saying that they were early, while thinking to herself that he really was a qualified simp, always so eager. But the person standing there was not who she expected. And it wasn't just one person. There were several of them. She immediately asked why they were here and how they knew where she lived. Before she could react, one of the men pushed her aside and said that the money owed to the Dahai gang was due today. She quickly replied that the money was borrowed by Qin Jiao and that he was the one who tricked her into signing, telling them to go find him instead. The man calmly pulled out the contract and said it was signed clearly in black and white, and whoever signed it had to pay. No excuses. At that moment, she finally understood. The man she once thought was a brainless simp had already woken up and started using his head. The goon then told the others to search the place and take anything valuable. As they began rummaging through her things, she tried to stop them, but they shoved her aside. She cried out that she was calling Qin Jiao and that he would be here soon. One of the men ignored her and casually sat down on the couch, looking around at her jewelry. Seeing them touch her things made her panic. She didn't want to lose any of it. The goon looked over the items and said that this little amount wasn't even enough to cover the interest. He added that his brothers had come all this way in the heat and couldn't leave empty-handed. She desperately tried to stop them again, saying the money was with Chen Jiao, not her. The goon smirks as the woman says that he also has a lot of supplies and is coming to pick her up soon. She tells them to wait for him and then ask him for the money. But when she tries to call, all she hears is a cold, automated voice saying that the number she dialed is currently unavailable. She freezes for a moment, unable to believe what's happening. She tries again, panic rising, only to hear the same message again. No matter how many times she calls, no one answers. Her breathing grows heavy, sweat forming on her face as her expression slowly darkens. She wonders how this could be happening. She insists that he must be busy and didn't hear the phone, saying she'll call again right away. But the goon snatches the phone away and tells her she's really stupid. He says she actually believed that guy would pay for her and that it's obvious he sold her out. He adds that the man never planned to pay anything back from the start. At that moment, the bad girl finally realizes the truth. The one she thought was a fool was never a fool at all. This time, she was the one being played. She weakly asks what he's talking about. The goon tells her to shut up and stop struggling. She cries and tells them to let her go, saying they should go find Qin Jiao instead, because he's the one with the money and supplies. But the goon ignores her and drags her away. No matter how much she screams, no one comes to help her. This time, there's no one left to save her. All the bad things she once did to others are finally coming back to her. Meanwhile, Qin Jiao is calmly enjoying his drinks, while his phone keeps ringing beside him. He doesn't bother answering. In his mind, he thinks that Lu Wanjing should get a proper taste of the apocalypse. As night falls and people hide indoors to escape the heat, the goon drags the crying woman away. He asks her again what good things Chen Jiao has at his place. She tells him he has air conditioning, cold drinks, and plenty of food. She says that's where everything is and that she really has nothing left. Hearing this, the goon's eyes light up. He thinks to himself that this sounds like a big catch. Then he tells the others it's time to go. As they leave, the woman glares in rage and thinks about Chen Jiao, cursing him in her heart and wishing him a horrible death. She is about to begin her own revenge plot. In the night, a lot of people were moving around really hurriedly with a lot of weapons in their hands. A voice says, right this way, that little beast Chen Jiao lives right here. At his home, the AC is on 24 hours a day and he has plenty to eat and drink. Another says that he is also extremely stingy and won't even share a sip of water with them. The auntie who previously came for that AC is really angry and frustrated with him and now wants to get back at him with these mafia boys. The mafia boys are also happy as they follow her. The leader of them says that old hag, you led the way well. Once they get the stuff, there will be plenty of benefits for her, so she can rest assured about the service she is doing. The hag says, oh my, thank you, Brother Zeng. He is truly generous. No wonder he could become a big boss. He is way too amazing, and no one can be above him. As she is saying this, in her mind she thinks about how that Chen guy is going to get it really bad. She feels extremely happy and is even praying for it to happen. She imagines Chen crying and begging, saying that big brother, spare his life. He admits Auntie Wang was wrong and says that from now on, her home is his home and she can live wherever she wants. Auntie Wang, thinking about all of this, sneers inwardly and thinks that she wants to see how arrogant he can be this time. They keep moving forward toward a road. Zong says this kid definitely has something going on. Even from outside, they can see the way the place is built is extremely crazy. It almost feels like this guy knows the future. One of the goons gets really excited and says, Brother Zong, watch him kick the door down. He promises Zong is going to enjoy it and tells everyone to just watch. However, as he rushes forward in excitement, he steps on a spot that suddenly triggers a trap. He gets zapped really hard, as if Zeus himself struck him with lightning. While being electrocuted, he cries out in pain, yelling out over and over again. Zong, standing behind him, is completely surprised. He has no idea what the hell is happening and wonders if this guy is an idiot. The others rush over to him, and one of them says this trash cramped up for no reason and asks if he is stupid. But the moment they touch him, they also get zapped back as the electricity transfers into their bodies. Now they all feel the same thing he felt earlier. Now they finally understand why this guy cramped up, because they are also crying and shouting for help. They scream and beg, saying, help me, help me. The zap of Zeus is just way too powerful. Zong, the auntie, and the others are now really scared. They have no idea what this even is. The auntie was hoping to see Chun crying and begging, but instead all she gets to see is these goons crying miserably. And this isn't even the end. An announcement and alarms start ringing all around them. Every one of them is completely dumbfounded, and it's like their dumbfounded levels are showing +2, +2, +3, and one guy is even at +5. Then the announcement plays, and a voice says that good luck comes, wishing everyone good luck. Good luck brings joy and love. The announcement continues while everyone is still getting zapped. It says that good luck comes with good luck welcoming, good luck thriving, and reaching the 4 C's. It repeats again and again as a chant. The electricity keeps rising as this announcement, prayer, and poem keeps getting sung. The guys keep crying and yelling about electricity. At this moment, Zong finally understands what's going on and immediately steps back. He now knows why this craziness is happening. Suddenly, a notification appears showing detected intense negative emotion shock +45, detected intense negative emotion panic +36, and detected intense negative emotion speechlessness +22. Chun is comfortably enjoying his cozy environment, watching all of this unfold on a screen. He casually says that their luck really isn't bad, since they managed to step right onto the protective electric grid with 1 foot. Zong immediately shouts back and tells Chun to stop talking nonsense. He says that paying back debts is a matter of principle, and if Chun returns the money, they'll call it even. He has already recognized Chen's voice. Then the auntie chimes in and agrees, saying that Chun has money to renovate but no money to pay his debts, and she questions how his parents even raised him. The hag still can't calm down at all and mutters that this one needs some special electricity. Chan, meanwhile, is leisurely eating his ice cream, watching everything while resting his foot on the table near the keyboard. He calmly tells Brother Zhang that the market price of his apartment is 4 million, which is more than enough to offset the 3.5 million debt. Then he continues through the speaker, saying that as for Lu Wenqing's debt, they should go find her instead, because it has nothing to do with him. After hearing this, Zong is extremely furious. In his mind, he thinks that right now supplies are king and everything else is nonsense. At the same time, Chen's voice comes through, and he says Brother Zhang should understand that a wise man submits to circumstances. He says that while he is in a good mood, they should part on good terms. He warns that if they keep looking for trouble, he won't be this polite anymore. After saying that, he presses the red button. The electricity instantly increases, and the goons start crying and screaming. They shout that it hurts, that they can't hold on anymore, and beg their boss for help. They are clearly suffering badly. Then the notification pops up, saying detected intense negative emotion pain plus 63, and detected intense negative emotion despair plus 77. Zong is truly scared now. He has no idea what kind of thing he has run into, so he chooses to retreat. While running away, he shouts that Chun Xiao should just wait because the Dahai gang won't let him off, even though they are fleeing like cowards. Another notification appears, saying detected intense negative emotion anger plus 78. As the gang escapes, the auntie becomes the next target. She is terrified and left all alone, standing there and staring at the apartment. The surroundings turn red as the environment grows more intense, and she has no idea what to do next. Her dream of seeing Chun Xiao beg and cry remains just a dream. As the temperature rises to 52 degrees Celsius, the whole area becomes deserted. No one wants to go outside anymore. For Chun, however, everything inside is cool and refreshing. He is enjoying life even more than before and casually watches TV. On the screen, the news anchor says that recently, cases of death from heat stroke have appeared in many places, and citizens are advised to avoid going out as much as possible. Suddenly, his phone vibrates with notifications. When Chun checks it, he sees Auntie Wang going crazy in the comments, accusing him of not being human and saying that he has food, drinks, and AC while just watching the elderly and children die from the heat. Another comment from a shopkeeper boss calls him selfish and says he isn't fit to be a neighbor. Another says that in extraordinary times, resources must be shared, otherwise he is a murderer. Another claims they are about to die from the heat and asks if he has no shame. Yet another demands that Chun Xiao come out and give everyone an explanation. Chun calmly drinks his cold beverage and keeps swiping through the notifications. Then another system notification appears, saying detected intense negative emotion jealousy plus 99, detected intense negative emotion anger plus 101, and total negative emotion value has exceeded 1,000 and rewards are being calculated. Looking at this, maybe Chun could start thinking after getting these rewards about how he could even post a proposal in the group chat. He could suggest that anyone who teaches the old hag lady a lesson and that evil supermarket guy would get food and water for 2 days. It would be the same strategy they are trying to use now, but he believes it would work extremely well. Best of all, it would be fair punishment. If he really expands on this, he could control everyone. After that, maybe he could even share a little. In that case, sharing would actually be a great thing. Standing in front of his supplies, he takes out his phone and snaps quite a lot of pictures of all the crazy and amazing items piled up there. Then he posts them in the group chat and says that yes, his stockpile is indeed quite large, and if anyone wants some, they can sign up. Immediately, a lady replies and says she is signing up and begs him to share a little. The hag also speaks up and says little Chun should send some food over to Auntie because her legs aren't good. The shopkeeper boss demands that Chun bring him 2 cases of water first. Someone else quickly adds a sign up +1. But things aren't going to be that easy. Chun replies and says that everyone should understand he isn't running a charity. If they want anything, they need to exchange something of equal value. Otherwise, there's no deal, and he refuses freeloaders. As soon as this message appears, the shopkeeper boss explodes and calls Chun a little brat, saying he's selfish and should hurry up and share the supplies if he still wants to be considered a good neighbor. The hag also jumps in, telling everyone to look at Chen's true colors and accusing him of refusing to save people who are dying. She curses him, saying he'll get his karma sooner or later and that she wants to see it happen. Another guy threatens Chun, saying that if they starve to death, he shouldn't think he'll have it easy either. Chun doesn't care at all. He simply puts his phone aside, completely unimpressed. He can't believe how useless these people are. Just then, a new notification appears, saying negative emotion value has reached 3,000. It announces a skill upgrade called Special Cut Beginner Level. The effect is described as creating a microscopic rift in the air that cuts any object it touches within a 3-meter range. Chun finds this extremely interesting. He starts thinking more deeply about this so-called special cut. Spotting an apple nearby, he immediately tries it out. In an instant, the apple is sliced cleanly in half without any effort at all. The effect is crazy. Chin says this is getting interesting. He never thought he would get something this powerful, but it's absolutely cool. He realizes he could even use it against those mafia guys if they keep hounding him too much. Outside, only a few cars are still running. Then a woman named Lu steps out of one of them. She's wearing a really flashy and nice dress, but appearances can be deceiving. She's the kind of bad woman people should stay away from, no matter how good she looks. Looking at her too much might even make someone like her more which is dangerous. Unless someone thinks they can fix her, it's better not to get involved at all. There's also another person in the car. He's still thinking about ways to get back at Chun. He steps out as well and asks little Zhang if the Chun Xiao he mentioned lives here. Zhang says yes, it's in the innermost building. As he reports this to his boss, the boss turns to Lu and asks if Chun Xiao used to be her man. He says that he's leading a team to raid Chun Xiao's home and asks if she'll feel heartache over it. After hearing this, Lu looks shocked at first, then immediately reassures him. She says that right now, her heart only has him in it and there's no space for anyone else. She tells him he's the best and the only one she could have ever wanted. She also adds that as for Chun Xiao, he's nothing but a useless piece of trash. But deep down, she's thinking to herself that tonight is Chun Xiao's end. She wants him completely finished today. She even feels ready to cling to this man harder and push him to act faster, just to make sure Chun Xiao is dealt with. As they move forward together, the shopkeeper suddenly runs over and eagerly asks if Big Brother is here for Chun Xiao. He explains that they're homeowners in this complex and says they're willing to help teach Chun Xiao a lesson. Another man behind him quickly agrees and says they know the area well. He offers to help block Chun Xiao's escape route if he tries to run. The boss nods and says that if they help catch Chun Xiao, he'll share some of the supplies from Chun Xiao's room with them. The shopkeeper immediately gets even more excited and thanks him enthusiastically. He urges the boss to follow him, saying they know a shortcut. He's extremely eager and wants Chun Xiao to get what he deserves as soon as possible, helping in every way he can. Around them, other people also start trying to grab whatever they can. Anyone who tries to stop them gets beaten back. No one wants to share anymore. Everyone just wants everything for themselves. As the mafia boss and the shopkeeper move through the area, the shopkeeper suddenly points ahead and nervously says that this is his home and that they're on the same side. The boss coldly replies that it doesn't matter. He says that from now on, the whole building belongs to Lu. The hag immediately explodes in anger and says they can't do this, insisting they never provoked them. She can't believe that she only wanted all of this to happen to Chen Xiao, not to herself. But these are mafia guys, and they don't care at all. They have power and people backing them, so they simply take whatever they want. The shopkeeper finally panics and collapses into regret. He admits that he was wrong and that he shouldn't have been greedy for those scraps. Now everything is gone, and even his way to survive has disappeared. He sees the hag getting beaten by the goons, and the others are also lying helpless on the ground. He keeps shouting that he was truly blind and wonders how he could ever trust a bunch of beasts like them. At this point, there's nothing that can be done. The mafia guys gather together with their swords, their boss standing at the front, and that bad girl right beside him. The bad girl has already gotten what she wanted, and now she only wants revenge. As they all stare at the building from outside, something suddenly crashes down. From inside, Chun Xiao throws a couch straight onto the ground below. While casually enjoying his meal, he looks down and asks if everyone is looking for him. He looks like he's having a great time. The boss sneers and says that death is already imminent, yet Chun is still putting on a show. He tells Chun to hand over the supplies, and he'll at least leave his body intact. The bad girl stands beside him, watching closely to see what happens next. Chun remains calm. He slowly wipes his mouth with a cloth and says that didn't their parents teach them basic manners. He says it's extremely rude to disturb someone while they're eating and asks if these goons can't even manage something that simple. That completely sets the boss off. He curses and orders everyone to beat Chun as much as they want. The goons rush forward all at once, but Chun easily dodges the punches while still holding his plate. His balance is ridiculously good. One guy lunges at him, and Chun grabs his head and slams it straight into the ground. Another man charges in with a huge weapon, swinging it wildly. Chun dodges the swing and kicks him hard, leaving the guy wondering what just happened. Then another attacker comes from behind with an axe and tries to strike Chun Xiao. Chun thinks to himself if they're really forcing him to use spatial segmentation now. He steadies himself and prepares. Suddenly, a bottle flies forward toward the boss and the bad girl. They look at it in confusion, and in the next moment, thick smoke fills the area. Turns out to be a smoke grenade. The boss starts coughing and shouting that it's tear gas. He yells that this kid has a helper and orders everyone to retreat immediately. The group panics and scrambles around. Even Chun Xiao looks a bit confused by this sudden development. In the chaos, the axe guy misses his strike and drops his weapon onto the ground. Then another voice speaks up, saying that the trouble Chen stirred up isn't small at all. He adds that Chen's skills are actually pretty impressive. Chun looks toward him and says he only wants to know one thing, asking why he's here. The man replies that it's about guns. He asks if Chun still wants them and says he has good goods available. The guy can't believe Chun Xiao is drinking ice water at a time like this. He comments that Chun is really living a comfortable life. Chun Xiao casually responds and says they should talk first. He asks asks why the guy is here, pointing out that his territory isn't on this side. The guy explains and says Lu Haifeng has been messing with his business lately, and he's been watching him for days. As he grabs the chilled water, he still can't quite believe it. He continues saying that he saw Lu heading this way, so he followed him to take a look. He didn't expect Lu was actually coming for Chun. He adds that supplies have been scarce for a long time, yet Chun has such a big stockpile, and that kind of thing can't be done without special channels. Chun asks what exactly he's trying to say. The guy quickly clarifies that he's not trying to pry. He says Lu Haifeng has recently stockpiled a large amount of purified water, and he wants to cooperate with Chun to get that water. He explains that he's very familiar with the layout of Lu's underground business. Chun would find a way to get the water, then they would store it here first, and after that he would handle selling it. Chun thinks about it and realizes that as the temperature keeps rising, water really is hard currency now. He agrees that cooperation is fine, but says the profit split will be 9-1, with him taking 9 and the other guy taking 1. The guy reacts immediately and complains that a 9-1 split is basically robbery. At the same time, a notification pops up saying detected strong negative emotion shock plus 40. Chun calmly replies that if he's not willing, then there's nothing to talk about. The guy suddenly panics and quickly softens his stance. He suggests an 8-2 split instead and asks if that's acceptable, saying he still needs to eat too. In his mind, he thinks this guy is too calm and must have some kind of trump card. He knows that aside from Chun, he can't find anyone more suitable. Chun thinks for a moment and then agrees that 8-2 works. However, he adds one more condition. He says that in the future, if the guy gets new goods, Chun gets first pick, and the rest can be sold afterward. The guy sighs and admits defeat, saying fine. Chun wins. Chun confirms the deal and says the first step is to figure out the stronghold structure and personnel distribution. Soon after, they reach a building nearby. From above, they look down, and the guy explains that this is Lu Haifeng's stronghold. He says the trading area is in the front, and people who are short on water either spend money to buy it or exchange other things for it. Many people are walking around with guns, clearly acting as security. There are also quite a few women providing entertainment and services. The guy further explains that some of the girls were captured specifically to serve the upper management. One of those girls turns out to be the same bad girl who cheated Chin earlier and even tried to bring a bunch of mafia guys to his home. The guy then adds that the water storage area is in the back, though he still hasn't figured out the exact location yet. Chun says he'll sneak in and take a look himself. He tells the guy that once he sees the signal, he should create chaos on the perimeter to draw away the main force. The guy is stunned and asks if Chun is really going in alone. He questions how Chun plans to move all that water by himself. Chun calmly replies that he has his ways. He moves ahead, slipping into the shadows. Soon, a guard steps out and stops him, saying he looks unfamiliar and asking where his ID is. Chun immediately pulls out a card-like item and says Boss Lu sent him to count the water stock. The guard scoffs and says counting water stock sounds like a joke, asking if Chun thinks he's trying to trick a child. A notification pops up showing detected negative emotion mockery plus 5. Chun calmly places his hand on the guard's shoulder. In his mind, he thinks that before, he only used special cut on apples, but today he'll cut something different. He instantly activates the skill. The guard's eyes widen in shock, but he doesn't even get a chance to react before he's taken out. A notification appears saying detected strong negative emotion horror plus 50 and pain plus 50. As the guard collapses, another man nearby starts firing. Chun dodges the shots and sends a special cut straight at the shooter, taking him down as well. Another notification pops up, showing detected strong negative emotion fear plus 100 and despair plus 100. Gunshots echo through the area, and more guards rush over, shouting that someone has sneaked in and telling each other to move fast. Heavy weapons come out, and one guy is even carrying a rocket launcher. Chun quickly hides in a corner. As the guards rush past in different directions, he thinks he's safe for the moment. Suddenly, a hand grabs him from behind. Chun Shao stiffens and realizes someone has caught him. When he looks back, he sees guards still swarming the area, searching everywhere. But the hand holding him belongs to a woman. She quietly tells him to stay quiet. She pulls him into a secluded spot. Once they're hidden, Chin asks why she's here. The woman says she was captured and asks if he was captured too. Chin doesn't answer directly. Instead, he asks if she knows where the water stockpile is. The lady says that they made her do cleaning work, and during that time she already figured out the layout. She tells Chun she can take him there. She looks around carefully, and suddenly a bucket falls in front of several soldiers. The soldiers immediately raise their guns and shout that someone is over there, telling everyone to move quickly. As they rush off, the The path ahead becomes clear for the lady and Chen Xiao. The lady tells him to follow her and says there are no surveillance cameras along this route. They move as fast as they can toward their destination. When they get close, Chen Xiao tells her to find a place to hide and wait for him to come back out. The lady obediently does as she's told. Chen Xiao then starts preparing his attack. He gathers his aura and smashes the door open with a powerful punch, forcing his way inside. However, there are several soldiers waiting inside. One of them shouts, demanding to know who he is and how he got in, clearly furious. Chen Xiao doesn't hesitate. The moment the man locks eyes with him, Chen uses his cut attack and takes him down instantly. A notification appears saying detected strong negative emotion shock +20, fear +20, and pain +20. As the lady hides and looks ahead, she starts worrying. She thinks that Chen Xiao has been inside for a long time and wonders if nothing happened to him. She's really anxious and hopes everything is fine. But when she carefully looks inside, she's completely horrified. The place is full of destruction, and she can't believe what she's seeing. Everything looks wrecked. Suddenly, she notices a figure walking straight toward her. She panics, starts shouting, and is about to attack. Then she realizes it's Chen Xiao. Chen calmly tells her that it's handled and says they should go. He immediately turns and starts walking. Then he pulls out a gun, points it into the air, and fires a shot. The bullet explodes midair. The lady is shocked by this, but Chen starts laughing because he knows exactly what he did. Outside, the guy sees the signal and immediately understands. He says that Chen Xiao is really not bad and sounds genuinely impressed. He then starts his own plan of destruction. He throws several prepared bottles onto the ground, causing chaos and explosions everywhere. The entire area quickly catches fire. People start shouting about the fire and rush around trying to put it out. Just as planned, everyone is completely distracted. With the chaos spreading, Chen Xiao and the lady easily move deeper into other areas. The lady points the way and says that going through the alley will lead them to the outskirts of the south gate. As they keep moving forward, another woman suddenly rushes up from behind and calls out to Chen Xiao, begging him to take her along. It's the same bad woman. Chen immediately turns around and recognizes her. She pleads again, saying they used to be lovers, and asks him to take her for the sake of their past. She moves closer and promises that as long as he takes her away from this place, she won't hold it against him for using her name to take out loans. Chen coldly responds that she really doesn't understand the situation at all. Hearing this, the woman breaks down and starts crying. She says they force her every day, forcing her to serve old men. If she resists, they beat her, and if she tries to run, they catch her and drag her back. She says she has nowhere else to go and begs Chen to let her live with him, promising she'll do anything for him. Chen looks at her and reminds her of everything she did. He asks if she ever thought about today when she laughed at him for having no money, called him a simp, slept with old men behind his back, and even led Lu Haifeng straight to try and kill him. After hearing this, the bad girl suddenly becomes truly scared. In that moment, she finally realizes that what she has done is completely irredeemable. Chen thinks even deeper. In his mind, he recalls his past life and thinks that when she dismembered him back then, did she ever imagine that today would come? She had done far too many horrific things to him, and there is no way he can forgive her, no matter what she says now. He forces himself to keep his emotions in check because he can't allow history to repeat itself. Chun coldly swats her aside and says her acting is still just as lousy as ever. He then turns to the other woman and tells her they should go. The woman glances at the bad girl lying on the ground and silently hopes she learns from this and never becomes someone like her. At that moment, the bad girl suddenly snaps. She says that if Chun won't let her live, then no one will have it easy either. Immediately, a notification pops up saying detected intense negative emotion hatred plus 999 completely goes off the charts. Not long after, the boss of the area arrives. The first thing he asks is where the water is and whether his water is still safe, because that's the most important commodity he has right now. When they open the door and see the devastation inside, their hearts sink. There's nothing left at all. Then they notice words written on the wall. It clearly says that Boss Lu's water has been taken, and that next time, his life will be taken instead. Lu completely loses it. He shouts, demanding to know who did this. He's furious beyond belief. At that moment, the bad girl lying on the ground speaks up. She tells Boss Lu that it was Chun Xiao. She claims she tried to stop him, but Chun injured her and even insulted Lu, calling him trash. She clings to Lu, deliberately manipulating him further, saying that Chun claimed Lu was unworthy of possessing such resources. She keeps fanning the flames and adds that Chun wants to take all of them down. Hearing this, Lu's anger completely explodes. He He orders everyone to follow him to the south gate and slaughter Chen Xiao. A massive commotion spreads throughout the entire area as the order is given. Chun and the other guy both notice the movement immediately. The guy comments on it, clearly understanding what's happening. As the entire force gathers behind their boss, Chun calmly mutters that Boss Lu moves fast. Still, he's already prepared. Then Lu points forward and gives the order, telling everyone to go get him. Everyone behind him charges forward, completely unable to control their anger. Their emotions are running wild, but this actually gives Chun the advantage. He stays calm and casually throws a torch onto the ground in front of them, instantly creating a huge wall of fire. The group is forced to stop, trapped behind the flames. The boss shouts that he will make sure Chen Xiao is finished. Right after that, a notification appears saying detected intense negative emotion hatred plus 999. Now there are two people whose hatred toward Chen has completely maxed out. Chen, however, stays relaxed. He says thanks to Boss Lu and mentions that he'll gladly take these emotion points to become even stronger and earn even more points in the future. Then another notification pops up. It says ding, negative emotion points have reached 3,000 and a new skill has been unlocked called Spatial Barrier. Inside the cozy shelter, the guy is throwing a small party. He laughs and says that what just happened was way too awesome and that old dog Lu is probably tearing his place apart right now. They sit there enjoying all kinds of insanely good dishes, partying without a care in the world, completely ignoring the deadly heat outside. The food looks so good that even just seeing it makes anyone want to join in. It's the kind of feast you want to dig into immediately, but sadly, unless there's real food in front of you, you can only imagine it. Still, the story goes on. After seeing all this, the lady sincerely thanks Chen Xiao. She says that if it weren't for him, she doesn't know how much longer she would have been trapped in that hellhole. She's extremely grateful and feels ready to do anything for him. She even offers to cook for him, saying she can make all kinds of food. She just wants to make him happy, because she knows guys like good home-cooked meals. Chan smiles and tells her they're old classmates, so there's no need to be so polite. He understands her gratitude, but he also wants her to relax, feel safe, and just take it easy here. The lady insists that it's not just politeness. She says he made her feel that there are still people in this world worth trusting. The guy then chimes in, saying that whole hero saving the beauty move was pretty impressive too. He jokingly asks Chun to give him the details, wanting to know exactly how he pulled it off. He can't believe Chun emptied an entire reservoir by himself and wonders if it's some kind of crazy magic. For a moment, the room falls into silence. Chun simply says that he has his ways and tells the guy he should focus on figuring out how to safely sell that much water instead. Hearing this, the guy freezes for a second, realizing Chun is right. Selling that amount of water without people noticing where it came from won't be easy at all. Chun then casually asks the lady about her life after junior high, mentioning that he never really heard any news about her after graduation. The lady hesitates, then explains that after graduation, her family ran into serious trouble. She says her parents went missing at the same time. As she talks, the memories overwhelm her, and she starts to panic again. Still, she pushes through, knowing Chen deserves to know the truth. But just as she's speaking, flames suddenly begin to rise around the area. They can't believe what they're seeing. When they look outside, the guy blurts out that the whole place is on fire. It's completely out of control. It's obvious that the people who lost the water either want it back or want everything destroyed. As the flames erupt, Chun, the lady, and the guy all stare outside. The fire is massive. In the chaos, they see people suffering. One person holding a child keeps screaming for help and begging someone to save the children. The guy suddenly realizes what's going on and says it's Lu Haifeng behind this, wondering if that bastard is really trying to burn everyone to death. The lady anxiously asks if they should do something. Chen, however, is lost in his own thoughts. In his mind, he realizes that Lu Haifeng is trying to use morality and innocent lives as a rope to bind him. He thinks it's pointless, because he's long past being that rotten do-gooder from his past life who would only get strangled to death for trying to save everyone. Outside, Lu Haifeng shouts for Chen Xiao to come out, threatening that if he doesn't, he'll burn the entire area to ashes and see how long Chen's so-called iron turtle shell can last. One of Lu's underlings flatters him, saying the boss is wise as always. He adds that if the fire keeps spreading, even if they don't burn to death, the smoke will finish them off. Lu enjoys the spectacle. As the fire grows bigger and bigger, his mood gets better and better. In his mind, he thinks that this is what happens when someone dares to fight him. The flames continue to rise, and nearby buildings start collapsing, which only fuels the fire even more. Inside the shelter, the guy starts panicking. He says they can't keep staying there like this. He warns that the heat will conduct inside, and even if they don't burn, they'll either be roasted alive or suffocate from lack of oxygen. Chin just smiles. He already has a plan. In his mind, He thinks that in a high-temperature apocalypse, there's no way he would be stupid enough not to install the highest-grade fire protection system in his safe house. He prepared for this long ago. He even has random old PCs still running, like ones with Windows XP or something. Then he calmly presses a red button. And normally, when someone presses a red button, things are about to go very wrong. But this time, it's the opposite. Outside, devices activate and begin spraying fire control grenades. They work like massive fire extinguishers, releasing thick suppressant smoke across the area. As the smoke spreads, the flames rapidly die down. The guy just stands there in disbelief, completely stunned by what he's seeing. He says, "Holy crap, it's nanograde aerogel." He can't believe Chun could even get his hands on something like that. He says this stuff is straight up military grade and asks if Chun robbed an army or something. The lady is also completely stunned by what she's seeing. As the fire starts dying down, the boss outside grows more and more frustrated. He snorts and says this is just a desperate death struggle. But he's clearly prepared for this too. Suddenly, one of the guys nearby tries to sneak an attack on him, thinking the boss is distracted. The guy swings with all his strength, but it's useless. The boss is far stronger. He takes the attacker down easily and orders everyone to keep going. He says he doesn't believe Chen's junk can last forever. He's ready to drag this out. The man beside him panics and stutters, telling the boss that the fuel is almost gone. He says that white mist is way too vicious. At that moment, Chen's voice echoes out. He casually asks Boss Lu if he's done playing with fire and jokes about whether he wants to come inside for a glass of ice water to cool off. Right after that, a notification appears saying detected strong negative emotion anger, plus 888. The people who were standing around outside, hoping to enjoy the fire show, are now completely disappointed. With the flames dying down, there's nothing left to watch. Inside his head, the boss changes his mind. He decides that just killing Chen Shao would be letting him off too easily. He realizes this house is fireproof, sturdy, and completely self-sufficient. In his eyes, it's the perfect shelter, and now he wants it for himself. Brute force didn't work. Fire attacks failed. So he decides there's no need to keep pretending anymore. He thinks that if that's the case, then no one should blame him for tearing away the last bit of civility he has left. As he looks toward the civilians nearby, fear spreads across their faces. Chen understands exactly what's about to happen, but he's already prepared for every possibility. His resolve is firm, and he's ready for whatever comes next. If you don't want to miss out what his resolve will bring next in this epic struggle, then subscribe right now and turn on all the notifications. As the fire burns nearby, the idiot boss shouts that Chen Shao should get the hell out and look at all these people suffering because of him. The auntie immediately starts crying and screaming at Chen, calling him a damn little brat. She blames him for offending Boss Lu and dragging everyone down with him, telling him to come out. Another guy yells that Lu Haifeng is a bastard and says that if it really comes down to it, they'll rush out and fight him to the death. Chen thinks to himself that using other people's lives to blackmail him is the oldest trick. Unfortunately, in this world, being soft-hearted is no different from committing suicide. Lu sneers and says that since Chun wants to hide like a coward, that's fine, and he'll start with this old thing instead. He grabs an elderly man who is trembling and crying in fear. At that moment, a voice shouts that Lu Haifeng will die a horrible death for doing this. When Chen hears that voice and sees what's happening, he immediately recognizes it as Grandpa Wang. He remembers how this old man once brought him water and told him to survive, saying that as long as he was alive, there would always be hope. That memory finally sparks real anger in Chen. He turns and tells Mu Kong to stay inside and protect Yu, saying he's going to settle the score with Boss Lu. The others look at him in shock, but they also understand. As Chun walks out into the sea of flames, he calmly tells Lu Haifeng that whatever grievances exist are strictly between the two of them and have nothing to do with anyone else. Lu is still gripping the old man by the collar, a torch burning in his hand. After hearing Chen's words, he throws the old man aside and mocks Chun, saying he's finally willing to crawl out of his turtle shell. He asks if Chun wants to play the hero. He then lays out his conditions, telling Chun to pay back the money, hand over the water, and leave his life behind, and maybe he'll consider letting the others go. Chun responds coldly and says he has no interest in playing the hero. The two of them stare at each other intensely. Then Chun raises his hand and points straight ahead. He says that fighting and killing are boring and only damage one's karma. He adds that he heard Lu started out running a casino, so why not settle this the way Lu is best at? He proposes a bet. Chun says that if Lu wins, everything he owns will belong to him. But if Chun wins, Lu has to release Grandpa Wang and get the hell out of this area. Then Boss Lu bursts out laughing and agrees right away. He throws the dice setup over and says they'll bet on the size of the points, one round to decide life or death. Chun quickly catches what was thrown to him and calmly says he's betting on big. He adds that a god of gamblers showdown is about to begin. Both of them adjust their stances, and for a moment it really feels like they're standing in a casino instead of a burning battlefield. They start shouting loudly as they begin the gamble. The dice machine is switched on, and the dice inside start spinning wildly. As the dice roll, everyone around starts cheering for their boss, shouting that Boss Lu will definitely win. Boss Lu himself looks extremely confident. When the dice stop, he bursts out laughing and proudly announces that it's 3 6s, a supreme roll, and that Chun has lost. Chun stays calm and tells him not to rush, saying the winner hasn't been decided yet. He then subtly manipulates the dice, using his own trick to move them as he wants. After that, he cuts through the dice cleanly and casually remarks that Boss Lu's dice don't seem to be very good quality. Everyone instantly panics when they see all the dice split in half. Someone shouts that the total points add up to 21, which is bigger than the so-called supreme roll. Chun declares that Boss Lu has lost and tells him to release the old man. Boss Lu is furious. He accuses Chun of cheating and immediately charges at him. A notification pops up saying strong negative emotion detected, anger plus 500. As Boss Lu rushes forward with a knife, he curses Chun and screams for him to die. The people around panic in fear. Chen, however, stays composed. In his mind, he thinks this is the perfect time to test his new skill. As Boss Lu lunges at him, Chun sidesteps effortlessly. He then hurls the dice machine at high speed, which terrifies Boss Lu. The machine slams into the ground, kicking up smoke and debris. Everyone rushes over in panic, shouting and asking if the boss is okay. Smoke fills the area. Boss Lu coughs and says he's fine. He orders 2 people to go find Chun for him. As the smoke starts to clear, Boss Lu suddenly spots Chun ahead and points in his direction, ordering everyone to take him down. All the goons immediately open fire, shooting wildly while shouting in excitement, eager to kill Chun. Boss Lu demands an update on the situation, but before anyone can respond, a sharp slash suddenly appears and takes down the goon standing right in front of him. Boss Lu is shocked. As the smoke finally settles, Chun is revealed standing there completely unharmed. Then Boss Lu pulls out a huge rocket launcher and says he doesn't care how strong Chun is. He says there's no way Chun can dodge this and tells him to die. He immediately fires the rocket. As the rocket shoots forward, the boss shouts that Chen's inheritance will all be his. At that moment, a notification appears saying special barrier activated. A barrier instantly wraps around Chen's entire body and protects him. The barrier takes the full impact of the rocket explosion and completely blocks it. Boss Lu starts panicking. Sweat pours down his face as he wonders what's going on. He can't believe Chun actually blocked a missile. Even he starts to feel that this guy is simply unbeatable. Chun smirks and tells Boss Lu that losing in front of so many people must be hard. He asks if Lu is planning to go back on the bet. As he speaks, Chun casually slices the missile apart with several slashes. Then he slowly starts walking forward. Seeing Chun approach, the boss feels genuine fear for the first time. Chun tells him that he doesn't even have a decent knife and says he's not worthy of negotiating terms with him. In his heart, Boss Lu thinks there's definitely something wrong with this guy and that something is seriously fishy. Chun then says Boss Lu has kept looking for trouble again and again, repeatedly crossing his bottom line, and that it's finally time to settle their score. But inside, Boss Lu is thinking fast. He realizes the fuel they brought is already used up and that fighting head-on is a losing deal. This kid has strange abilities, and his safe house is basically a gold mine. He decides it would be better to recruit Chen Xiao and earn back all his losses with interest. So even though he hates doing this, he forces a smile onto his face. With sparkling eyes and a fake friendly expression, he says that it's all a misunderstanding. He says they can be considered friends who got to know each other through a fight and asks Chun how about they make a deal. Boss Lu continues and tells Chun Xiao to listen to him. He says that killing him would only leave blood on Chen's hands and gain him nothing. He adds that in this world, human life is cheap, but he himself can help Chun survive and live better. He then brings up that he has a batch of medicine, all antibiotics like penicillin and cephalosporin. He asks if Chun understands how precious those things are right now. He explains that even a small infected wound can take a life. He offers to let Chun off the hook if Chun spares him, saying he'll split that batch of medicine with him. Chun Xiao listens carefully and then admits that in times like these, antibiotics really are hard currency. He tells Boss Lu honestly that he doesn't just have this one room and that the things he stored are far more than Lu could imagine. Hearing this, Boss Lu is shocked. He immediately points out that Chun only has food and water, and without medicine, even one illness could be fatal. He suggests cooperation and says that batch of medicine is stored in an abandoned factory in the West District, and only he knows the password. Chun stares at him coldly for a moment and then agrees, saying that tonight's matter ends here. He even puts his arm around Boss Lu's shoulder in a seemingly friendly gesture. Boss Lu hurriedly agrees, saying yes, yes, it ends here and that it's good the misunderstanding has been cleared up. Chen Xiao then tells him to go ahead for now and says they'll talk about the details another day. Boss Lu begins to leave. His underlings look confused and call out to him, wanting to know what happened. Boss Lu simply tells them to go, and they all start walking away together. Chen Xiao keeps a sharp eye on them as they leave. When they're far enough away, he quietly mutters that a password alone can't stop him, and that even without it, he can open the door. He then turns back to the people still standing there, especially Grandpa Wang, and reassures him that it's okay now and that everyone has left. As Chun speaks to Grandpa Wang, the lady nearby can barely hold herself together. She's panicking, frustrated, and mostly overwhelmed by fear, with her status clearly showing fear plus 100. Grandpa Wang thanks Chun over and over. He says Chun saved his life and that if Chun ever needs him in the future, he should just ask. He admits he's old and can't fight anymore, but he can still help plant seedlings or do chores. Chen Xiao gently tells Grandpa Wang that he understands his intentions and asks him to go back, lock his door, and rest well. As the moon hangs overhead and the heat keeps rising even at night, everyone finally retreats indoors. While walking back, one guy in the group mutters that Chen Xiao scared him half to death earlier. Up ahead, Boss Lu is walking with them. He sneers and says that Chen Xiao is just some reckless youngster. He scoffs at the idea of really splitting the medicine and says that talk of cooperation was nothing but a stalling tactic. He explains that he only wanted to stabilize Chen first. Once he figures out how to get his hands on Chen's supplies, he'll deal with him properly. He adds that if Chen thinks he can fight him, then he's still far too green. Hearing this, the underlings immediately start flattering him. One of them says the boss is wise. Another echoes the same thing and adds that Chen Xiao dares to fight Boss Lu, and he probably won't live more than 3 days. Boss Lu's expression turns serious. He says that something is definitely wrong with Chen Xiao. Even artillery shells couldn't get close to him, which makes no sense. He orders Pineapple Head to spend the next few days investigating Chen Xiao carefully. But before he can say anything more, something suddenly strikes him hard and knocks him to the ground. The underlings are instantly terrified. One of them shouts to run. Another screams, asking if there's a ghost or something. None of them can believe what just happened. In their panic, they all scatter and flee, leaving Boss Lu lying alone on the ground. On a nearby building, a figure stands quietly with one hand extended. It's Chen Xiao. He calmly says goodbye to Boss Lu forever. Later that night, a loud announcement echoes everywhere. It declares an emergency notification, saying the global high-temperature phenomenon is completely out of control. Multiple climate tipping points have been breached, and the ecosystem is on the verge of collapse. Authorities formally suggest that residents make a choice based on their situation. One option is to migrate north to the temporary shelters established by the government. The other option is to stay put and wait for rescue. The announcement repeats that this is not a drill. Chen Xiao listens and thinks it through. He says going north to that so-called Pure Land will soon turn into a new purgatory. Waiting for rescue is an even bigger fantasy. In his mind, he knows the real nightmare has only just begun. As he thinks about the monsters, he calmly reflects. He thinks that before long, heat-resistant mutant beasts will start devouring everything created by civilization. He also knows that awakened humans will appear and form factions, fighting over resources and killing each other. He realizes that what he needs to do isn't just guard this safe house. He wants to turn it into the final fortress for survival in the apocalypse. Outside, many people are already starving. Someone shouts that they're starving to death and that their homes have burned down to nothing, asking what about Chen Xiao. Another person yells that Chen Xiao is occupying such a big, sturdy fortress all by himself, enjoying food, drinks, and air conditioning. Anger keeps building among the crowd. One man starts pounding on the door and shouts for Chen Xiao to come out. He blames Chen for refusing to help earlier and says that because of that, everyone ended up like this. He demands an explanation. Others follow up, saying they've already decided that Chen must share the safe house. They claim everyone should take turns living there for collective survival, smirking as they say it. Inside, Chen Xiao doesn't react at all. He listens to some relaxing music while calmly doing household chores, completely at ease. He even takes a picture of the nice meal he prepared and posts it, casually scrolling through the comments afterward. As he looks at the reactions, status notifications pop up showing jealousy plus 150, anger plus 130, and despair plus 95. Chen Xiao looks at the comments and thinks that incompetent fury is the cheapest emotion in the apocalypse. Outside, the crowd can only shout, curse, and throw things to vent their frustration. Some even smash their own phones. One man throws his phone away and curses, saying that since Chun refused a toast, he'll be forced to drink a forfeit, and swears he'll definitely take Chen down. Meanwhile, Chen Xiao thinks about the abandoned factory in the West District and decides he'll go scout the route first. But the moment he steps out, people start throwing things at him. Among the flying debris, a machete suddenly comes straight toward him. As Chen Xiao dodges the objects flying straight at him, he sees a few people charging toward him, shouting that if he doesn't give up the house today, they'll cripple him. But the moment they see Chen Xiao moving straight at them, they're stunned. Chen Xiao grabs one guy's attacking hand and twists it hard, forcing the weapon to fall out. The man can't believe how fast Chen Xiao is. Another guy tries to attack from behind, but Chen Xiao dodges that too. After disarming the first guy, Chen Xiao now has the weapon in his own hand. Just then, another man sees his chance and rushes in to attack. As the guy winds up, Chen Xiao stares at him coldly and unleashes a series of rapid slashes, one after another. In an instant, all the attackers are down on the ground. One of the fallen men trembles and says that Chen Xiao actually dared to attack people in broad daylight, with so many witnesses watching. A notification pops up showing fear plus 1,000. Chen Xiao calmly responds that taking them down would just dirty his hands, so there's no way he'll do that. Hearing this only makes the people on the ground feel even more humiliated. As Chen Xiao walks away, he thinks that finishing them off directly would be letting them off too easily. In this weather, with wound infections, ulcers, and sepsis, they'll slowly rot in pain within a few days. Later, at the West District factory, which is sealed shut even during the daytime, Chen notices a surveillance camera. He immediately cuts it down, destroying it along with some nearby equipment. He slips inside and quietly looks around. Soon, he starts coughing and realizes it's poison gas. He curses and understands that this is a trap and that he's in real trouble now. Suddenly, he senses other people nearby. One of them rushes over wearing a mask and quickly injects Chen Xiao with something, shocking him. The masked man calmly says that the young man should feel a bit better now. He explains that although the nerve gas isn't fatal, it's extremely unpleasant. Chen Xiao demands to know who they are. In his mind, he wonders why there are guards here. Lu Haifeng never mentioned this. He suspects that old bastard might have set him up, but these two don't seem openly malicious. As the masked man puts the syringe away and hands another injection to the woman, he introduces himself and says his name is Lin Guodong and that he's a biomedical researcher. Then he starts thinking that this place is really strange, with all kinds of weird stuff lying around everywhere. It feels more like a laboratory than a simple medicine storage room. As they walk around, Lin says that Chun needs medicine anyway, so he can take whatever he wants. He tells him to consider it an apology for the security measures and also a small meeting gift. Chun immediately starts checking the shelves, picking out what he might need. He stuffs his bag with all kinds of useful and interesting medicines. After a while, he slings the bag over his shoulder and says thanks. As Chun turns to leave, Lin keeps watching him and then calmly says that they'll meet again. Later in the evening, even though it's already night, the heat is still unbearable. When Chen Xiao finally gets back home, he suddenly feels uneasy. He thinks that although Professor Lin saved him and didn't make things difficult, the way that man looked at him really gave him the creeps. Just then, a notification pops up in the homeowners group chat. Someone is desperately asking who has antibiotics or hemostatic drugs, saying they're willing to buy at a high price. Seeing this, Chen Xiao immediately thinks about the medicine he just got. He figures he only picked up a few boxes, but the effects should be good. Still, he decides they're not for sale. That single decision instantly makes the group explode. One person curses him and calls him a selfish villain. Another threatens him, saying once they recover, they'll come straight to his door and take him down. Someone else tells him to just wait. Notifications start popping up non-stop, showing anger plus 99, hatred plus 200, and jealousy plus 380. Chen Xiao calmly ignores the insults and starts rummaging through his bag. Suddenly, his expression changes when he pulls something out and realizes it's a tracker. At that moment, everything clicks. Now he understands why he felt those creepy vibes back there. As he processes this discovery, Chen Xiao calmly disables the tracker. The initial shock fades, replaced by cold determination. He realizes that Professor Lin's so-called kindness was just a disguise, and that this so-called meeting was nothing more than a setup. The true situation is finally clear, and Chen Xiao quietly prepares himself for the challenges that are about to come. As Chen Xiao notices this, he's completely shocked. He wonders who put the tracker in his bag and when they even managed to do it. But instead of panicking, he decides if someone wants to play a tracking game with him, then fine, he'll play along too. So, in true big brain fashion, he attaches the tracker to a random cat. Now the cat just starts roaming around to all its usual spots like it owns the city rent-free. Meanwhile, the person tracking him watches the movement pattern on the computer and gets completely confused. The tracker starts zigzagging everywhere like the GPS itself drank 5 energy drinks. He wonders what on earth Chen Xiao is even doing. Then suddenly, someone in terrible condition sends a message asking if anybody has medicine, anti-inflammatories, or fever reducers because his brother is in really bad shape. He says people can't just refuse to save the dying. Right after that, another lady carrying a child begs everyone for clean water. She says her child hasn't had water for 2 days and asks if any kind-hearted person can spare even a little. She even offers to trade her treasured picture books and says everything is negotiable. Jan immediately says it's the sympathy-baiting act again. He explains that in the past, she used the exact same trick to get a ton of benefits from people. Chun Xiao agrees and says it's the same old performance all over again. But then Chun Xiao reads another message, and this one is directly aimed at him. The message says Chun Xiao stockpiled so many supplies just to take them into his coffin. It accuses him of pretending to be dead while a child is supposedly dying of thirst. The sender calls him cold-blooded, selfish, irresponsible, and even says he deserves to stay single forever. Chun Xiao just thinks the whole thing is ridiculous. He says it's not his child, so why should he be responsible? Moral blackmail and fake hypocrisy aren't going to work on him. And then things suddenly take a turn. Someone calls out Guang Wei and tells him to bring out the 3 boxes of water and 2 boxes of canned food he stockpiled to share with the woman first. To make it worse, the person says whatever Guang Wei shares, they'll personally match double. The moment the lady hears this, she freezes. She suddenly realizes Chun Xiao actually installed cameras in the hallway. She thought she had been extremely careful this whole time, yet she was still caught on camera. Then the chat completely explodes. One person angrily asks Wang Wei if he really drank that much water by himself. Another demands he bring everything out immediately and share it with everyone. And before anybody can calm things down, a group of thugs suddenly gathers outside the doorway and starts smashing at it with axes. One of the crazier guys screams for the people inside to hand over all the food and water unless they want things to get ugly. But the situation becomes even more chaotic the moment the crowd notices the pretty lady. At that point, people completely lose control and start grabbing every valuable thing they can get their hands on like it's the world's worst shopping sale. Meanwhile, the woman can't hold back her emotions anymore and just breaks down crying. Another guy sadly says his brother should rest in peace. But before anyone can even process the situation, someone from behind immediately complains that they can't just leave the body there because in this heat it will start rotting, stink up the whole place, and eventually make everyone sick. Another person completely loses hope and asks if nobody cares whether they all live or die anymore. The atmosphere starts getting heavier and heavier, and honestly, at this point the building is one bad event away from turning into pure chaos. But then suddenly, a calm voice interrupts everyone. A man steps forward and tells everybody not to panic. He says they are a medical team sent by the city CDC to help everyone. He explains that they rushed over as soon as they received the order, but unfortunately the roads were blocked, making them arrive a little too late. Still, he says the situation can be handled. In this extreme heat, corpses need professional disposal immediately, otherwise an epidemic could break out, and the consequences would be unimaginable. He then starts handing out disinfectant tablets and basic medicine supplies while explaining that quantities are limited, so everyone must use them carefully and distribute them according to need. The mood instantly changes. Everyone who was panicking just moments ago suddenly feels like hope downloaded back into the server. One lady emotionally thanks the team and says they truly are their saviors. Another guy excitedly says he knew the country hadn't abandoned them. But while everyone else is feeling relieved, one of the men quietly starts thinking to himself. He notices the signal he has been tracking became completely chaotic around this area. He realizes the person he's searching for has to be nearby and couldn't have gone far. At the same time, Chun Xiao is silently watching everything unfold from his window above. But the moment he spots one particular person in the crowd, his expression changes immediately. He recognizes Professor Lin and wonders why he's here. Chun starts thinking that maybe Professor Lin is actually tracking him. And then, right as his suspicion grows, his phone suddenly vibrates with a new notification. He checks the message, and it simply says to watch out for that doctor. The second Chun reads it, he freezes. He immediately wonders who even sent the message. At this point, random people are tracking him, mysterious warnings keep appearing out of nowhere, and every single thing happening around him feels more suspicious than the last. The man is basically collecting enemies and stalkers like they're limited edition trading cards. Then the scene suddenly cuts away. On top of a distant rooftop, someone can be seen silently observing the area through a massive telescope. And the creepiest part, Chun somehow feels it. He gets the strange sensation that someone else is watching him too. As Chun tries calling the mysterious number back, the phone coldly responds that the number he dialed is a virtual number. Instantly, Chun realizes he can't trace the caller at all. Whoever sent that warning is deliberately hiding their identity. Chun starts wondering whether this unknown person is genuinely trying to help him, or if they're secretly manipulating him into dealing with Professor Lin for them. Either way, the situation just keeps getting more suspicious. Meanwhile, outside, people are already praising Professor Lin nonstop. One person gratefully says that thanks to Professor Lin's help, nothing terrible happened with the bodies in this extreme heat. Another disaster was barely avoided. Professor Lin calmly responds that it's simply his duty. He tells everyone to stay careful of heat stroke and says that if anybody feels uncomfortable, they can find him anytime. But while everyone else sees a kind doctor, Chun notices something strange. As he watches Lin closely from above, he spots unusual marks on his clothes. At first they look like blood stains, but at the same time they also resemble dried chemical medical reagents. That instantly triggers a memory from Chen's past life. Shortly after the heatwave outbreak back then, medical teams suddenly appeared in certain areas claiming they were collecting blood samples for epidemic prevention. But after that, many strong-bodied people mysteriously disappeared without a trace. At that moment, Chun becomes certain Professor Lin is someone he absolutely needs to watch carefully. Then Professor Lin puts up a public notice. It says that to prevent heat stroke and the spread of infectious diseases, a free health check station will open starting tomorrow. The station will provide basic physical examinations, wound treatment, and nutritional supplements. It also mentions the location being underground parking lot 3 and says everyone coming for a checkup can receive an extra bottle of water. The second people read the notice, the crowd immediately gets excited. One person happily points out they're even giving away free water. Another says Professor Lin really is a good person for still helping everyone despite the terrible weather. And honestly, at this point, free water in the apocalypse is basically equivalent to winning the lottery. Forget gold bars, people are about to start treating bottled water like legendary loot drops. Meanwhile, the cat carrying Chen's tracker keeps wandering around outside, completely unaware it has become the main character of a spy thriller. Eventually, Professor Lin finally finds it and realizes why the signal had been moving so randomly the whole time. He watches the cat happily eating and comments that no wonder the signal kept drifting around. But right after he pets the cat, something in his pocket suddenly rings. The moment he checks it, his expression changes immediately and he realizes he's been spotted. At the same time, notifications suddenly appear showing speechlessness increasing by 25 and unwillingness increasing by 39. Then someone looking at Professor Lin suddenly realizes the truth and quietly says it's really him. Soon after, even larger crowds begin gathering at the medical station. One exhausted lady complains about how unbearably hot it has become and wonders when it will finally rain again. Another guy says it actually feels cooler inside the underground area. As more people arrive, Professor Lin officially starts the examinations. Calmly and professionally, he asks each person for their name, age, and any recent physical discomfort while the assistant beside him carefully records everything down. One elderly man introduces himself as Chun Dae, 76 years old. He says he hasn't experienced any recent discomfort, though his blood pressure has always been high. As Chen Xiao secretly watches everything from above, he notices something that immediately raises another red flag. Along with the health checkups, Professor Lin's team is also drawing blood from people. One man nervously asks why blood samples are necessary too, but Professor Lin calmly reassures him that it's only a routine examination and tells him not to worry. Hearing that, Chun becomes even more suspicious. He starts wondering what Professor Lin is really trying to do here, because at this point, every routine check feels less like healthcare and more like the opening scene of a disaster movie. Then suddenly, another desperate voice cuts through the crowd. A man rushes over begging Professor Lin to save his injured brother, explaining that the wound has already become infected. Professor Lin immediately hands over a bottle and explains that it's a new type of broad-spectrum enhancer that can speed up healing and resist infection. He calmly tells the injured man to rest for a few days and says he should recover soon. The man gratefully thanks Professor Lin, believing he's been saved. But Chun keeps observing carefully, and something about the entire situation just feels wrong to him. Even Professor Lin himself seems to be paying unusually close attention after giving out the medicine. Later, as the injured man and his companion head back, Chun quietly follows them from a distance to see what happens next. At first, everything seems normal, but then the injured guy suddenly starts acting strange. His friend immediately notices something is wrong and asks if he's okay. The man says his bones feel like they're burning from the inside. He says it hurts badly, and then things instantly go from suspicious to absolutely terrifying. The man's arm suddenly begins mutating right in front of them. Veins bulge out violently, his muscles twist unnaturally, and he starts screaming in agony as some horrifying transformation begins taking over his body. His friend panics and keeps asking what's happening to him. But before he can react further, the transformed man suddenly grabs him by the collar and lifts him off the ground like he weighs nothing. The terrified friend stammers that he's his boss and begs him to calm down. He reminds him that they know each other and asks if he's lost his mind. But then the mutated man suddenly snaps back with pure rage in his voice. He asks why his boss didn't remember their relationship back when he shoved him forward to block a knife for him before. That one line instantly changes the entire mood of the scene. Suddenly, it's not just a monster transformation anymore. Now there's betrayal, revenge, and years of resentment exploding out at the same time. Then, with terrifying strength, the mutated man throws his boss away like trash. Right after that, he suddenly senses someone nearby and demands to know who's there. And then he spots Chen Xiao. The moment he recognizes him, the atmosphere completely freezes. As the mutated minion completely loses control, he starts attacking everyone around him, and that includes Chen Xiao too. But Chen instantly dodges the attack with ease. Instead of panicking, Chen carefully analyzes the monster while fighting. He quickly notices the guy's strength has increased by more than 3 times, but at the same time, his joints have become stiff, and every attack follows a very direct and predictable path. At that moment, Chen realizes this is absolutely not a normal drug reaction. Something far more dangerous is happening here. The mutated man charges toward him again, but this time Chen decides to finish things immediately, and with a single clean slash, he takes the monster down on the spot. But the scene becomes even sadder after the fight ends. As the body collapses, it's clear the man is actually crying the whole time. Deep down, some part of him was still conscious. It's honestly tragic. But in this brutal world, one bad decision is sometimes all it takes to end up as somebody else's experiment. Meanwhile, elsewhere, Professor Lin notices something strange again. The positioning signal suddenly stops moving once more. He becomes confused and frustrated because the nanobot tracker hidden inside the reagent should have been working perfectly. Just moments ago, the signal was completely normal. Now he realizes something unexpected definitely happened. As Lin examines the dead bodies, he pulls out a screen and begins analyzing the situation. He concludes that the excessive stimulation from the T7 prototype agent caused a nervous system breakdown, but strangely, that alone shouldn't have been the direct cause of death. Then his thoughts shift toward Chen Xiao again. The more he analyzes the wounds, the more suspicious he becomes. He notices the fatal injuries on Lu Haifeng's body match the same perfectly clean cuts from the damaged door lock incident earlier. The cuts are smooth, precise, and unnaturally sharp. And the creepiest part? There were no visible weapons or equipment capable of making marks like that. At this point, Professor Lin becomes certain Chen Xiao is no ordinary person. He starts thinking that when he first met Chen, he already felt there was something unusual about him. Now he realizes his instincts were correct. In fact, Chen may even possess the exact thing Professor Lin has been searching for all this time. And just like that, Chen Xiao unknowingly goes from suspicious survivor to top priority research target, which is honestly not the kind of promotion anybody wants in an apocalypse. A little later, Professor Lin discovers another injured man nearby coughing heavily. He immediately checks the wounds and warns him not to move because his lungs might already be bleeding internally. The injured man weakly recognizes Professor Lin and desperately begs him for help. He also asks what happened to Abu after seeing the horrifying scene nearby. Professor Lin calmly says he's sorry about the man's friend. But then, in a very calculated move, he suddenly pulls out Chen Xiao's photo and asks whether the injured man knows him. Lin explains that his friend's condition may be connected to Chen Xiao. He says only by finding Chen can they uncover the truth and stop more people from getting hurt. The injured man stares at the photo for a moment, and then immediately says he knows exactly where Chen Xiao lives. Professor Lin calmly tells the injured man not to worry, and says he'll handle everything from here. He explains that the man needs professional treatment immediately and claims his laboratory has the best equipment available. For now, he tells him to rest and recover inside the lab. The injured man becomes extremely grateful and repeatedly thanks Professor Lin, genuinely believing he's being rescued. But the moment he's brought deeper into the laboratory, the atmosphere suddenly changes. The man nervously starts talking about Abu again. He says Abu was perfectly normal before, and that everything only went wrong right after receiving the injection from Professor Lin's place. He says the guy barely even walked a few steps before turning into that monster. And then suddenly realization hits him. You can practically feel the fear loading into his brain in real time. Professor Lin immediately explains that it was simply an extreme rejection reaction to the reagent. He calmly says cases like that are very rare and assures the man they'll perform detailed examinations before arranging the best possible treatment. But now the injured man is no longer buying it so easily. The more he thinks about it, the more terrified he becomes. He nervously suggests maybe he should just go home instead. He says perhaps some antibiotics will be enough for recovery. And honestly, at that point, the survival instincts finally kicked in. Very late, but at least they showed up. The man forces an awkward smile while trying to leave, but suddenly, someone behind him places a heavy hand on his shoulder. Instantly, the mood turns ice cold. Then Professor Lin calmly says that for the sake of science, and for the man himself, he should stay quiet. The second those words leave his mouth, the injured man completely panics. He starts screaming and begging not to be touched, but it's already too late. The screams continue echoing through the isolated laboratory room, as whatever horrifying experiment they're running begins behind closed doors. Meanwhile, Chun Xiao is secretly nearby, hearing everything unfold. And the more he listens, the more certain he becomes that Professor Lin Guodong is hiding something terrifying. Chun starts wondering what Lin's true goal really is, because this no longer feels like medical treatment at all. It feels like human experimentation disguised as rescue work. And then suddenly, one of the nearby monitors flickers on. Professor Lin's face appears on the screen. Looking directly toward Chen's hiding place, he calmly asks if this is Chun Xiao, and then says he wants to have a chat. Professor Lin calmly tells Chun Xiao that he really does live there after all. He apologizes for disturbing him so late at night and casually comments about the weather, saying it's incredibly hot outside and so cloudy that you can't even see the stars properly anymore. Chun Xiao responds by asking why Professor Lin is looking for him this late. Lin says he heard Chun lived there, so he decided to personally come visit him. The moment Chun hears that, he immediately realizes Professor Lin reached his doorstep even faster than expected. But instead of avoiding him, Chun decides to meet him face to face since Lin came on his own initiative anyway. Deep down, Chun honestly didn't expect their next meeting to happen this soon. Later that night, inside Qin Zhao's heavily secured safe house, Professor Lin quietly looks around the living room while analyzing every detail. He points out how unusual the house is. Double-layer insulated glass, an independent water circulation system, and all kinds of reinforced modifications make it look less like a normal apartment and more like a fully prepared apocalyptic bunker. Lin then directly asks if Chun somehow knew the extreme heat wave was coming long before everyone else. Chun casually replies that it was just some renovation package he grabbed during a Double 11 sale the previous year. He jokes that the contractor guaranteed it would last 50 years, and at the time he thought the guy was completely bluffing. Turns out the contractor might actually have been a prophet. That line instantly makes the conversation feel lighter for a second, but the tension underneath never disappears. Professor Lin smiles slightly and says that's interesting, but then immediately shifts the topic towards something much darker. He tells Chun Xiao that Abu is dead. Then he mentions Lu Haifeng died earlier as well. Lin explains that he personally examined both bodies and discovered something disturbing. Both victims had their cervical vertebrae severed instantly with unbelievably smooth cuts, almost like laser surgery. According to Lin, ordinary knives couldn't create wounds like that. Even military-grade weapons would struggle to leave such perfectly precise marks. He then subtly wonders whether both murders were committed using the same weapon. Chun Xiao stays completely calm and casually responds that if Professor Lin ever discovers what kind of weapon it is, he should recommend it to him too. Professor Lin immediately asks what Chun would even need something like that for. Without missing a beat, Chun says it would obviously be for cutting steak. He explains that in this insane heat, meat becomes tough too quickly, so a really sharp knife would come in handy. That response visibly catches Professor Lin off guard. A notification even pops up showing speechlessness increasing again. At this point, the conversation honestly feels less like two people talking and more like two chess grandmasters politely threatening each other over tea. After staring at Chun for a while longer, Professor Lin continues speaking seriously. He says that no matter what, both victims were most likely killed by the same person, and whoever did it had extremely professional skills. Definitely not an ordinary individual. Chun calmly replies that maybe those people simply had bad luck and provoked something they shouldn't have. Then Professor Lin quietly drops another line that instantly changes the atmosphere again. He says he heard both of the dead men happened to have conflicts with Chun Xiao before they died. Chun Xiao immediately laughs it off and tells Professor Lin he really knows how to joke around. He says he's just an ordinary person, so how could he possibly have the kind of abilities Lin is hinting at? But then Chun suddenly turns the conversation around. He points out that Professor Lin showed up at his house this late at night carrying a medical kit, then jokingly asks if Lin thinks he's about to die too. At the same time, Chun quietly drops another important question. He says he never remembers giving Professor Lin his address, so how exactly did he find this place? Professor Lin calmly pulls out a photo and says Chun should recognize this person. He explains that the man was the one who told him where Chun lived. The moment Chun sees the picture, he instantly realizes it's Jiang Chong. Chun immediately asks where Jiang Chong is now. Lin explains that Jiang Chong was seriously injured and he's currently treating him. Chun then asks how Jiang Chong is doing. But deep down, Chun already knows Jiang Chong's fate is probably worse than death at this point. Falling into Professor Lin's hands is basically the apocalypse equivalent of clicking accept cookies without reading anything first. Professor Lin calmly explains that Jiang Chong is currently adapting to a new treatment under high temperature conditions. According to him, the human body is beginning to evolve, and Jiang Chong is simply evolving faster than everyone else. The second Chun hears that explanation, alarm bells instantly start going off in his head. He immediately suspects Professor Lin is conducting human experiments. So Chun directly asks what Professor Lin's real purpose is for coming here tonight. And right as the tension reaches its peak, the scene suddenly cuts back to Jiang Chong. Inside the laboratory, Jiang Chong suddenly wakes up and completely loses control. He starts violently smashing equipment around him while alarms begin flashing everywhere. Notifications rapidly appear showing his vital signs fluctuating violently, with one of the indicators turning bright red. Then another warning reveals his genetic mutation rate has already reached 37%. Meanwhile, Professor Lin calmly explains that the injection is an immune enhancer he personally developed. He claims it can resist various pathogens caused by the extreme heat and insists it has no side effects. The funniest part is Chun Xiao immediately looks at the liquid and casually comments that it looks exactly like blueberry soda. Then he asks whether he's supposed to shake it before drinking it. Professor Lin just silently stares at him while another speechlessness notification appears again. At this point, Chun Xiao is mentally farming emotional damage points from this man non-stop. Then Professor Lin finally drops the act entirely. He openly tells Chun that he already knows Chun is not an ordinary person. He explains that the high temperatures will only continue getting worse, the world itself is changing, and the survival rate for normal humans will eventually fall below 10%. But according to Lin, certain people will evolve. Chun immediately fires back by asking whether that evolution is supposed to look like what happened to Jiang Chong. Professor Lin calmly responds that sacrifices are always necessary for scientific progress. He says someone must always walk ahead first. Then he tells Chun something even more unsettling. According to Lin, Chun possesses much more stable evolutionary traits than normal people. Because of that, Lin wants to cooperate with him to discover a way for humanity to survive and adapt to this new world. Chun Xiao directly asks Professor Lin what happens if he refuses the offer. But instead of getting angry, Professor Lin stays unusually calm. He tells Chun there's no need to rush his decision. According to him, the extreme heat is only the beginning. Soon infections, diseases, and even mutant creatures will start appearing one after another. Then Lin says that if Chun cooperates with him, the knowledge and technology from his laboratory could help him survive far longer than ordinary people. Before leaving, he even places the reagent behind for Chun and calmly says that if Chun ever changes his mind, the doors to his laboratory will always remain open for him. And honestly, that line sounds less like an invitation and more like the world's politest villain speech. As Professor Lin walks away, he silently analyzes Chun Xiao in his mind. He concludes that Chen's mental fortitude is incredibly strong, and his defensive awareness is practically top tier. That alone confirms Chun is definitely not an ordinary person. But then Lin's thoughts become even darker. He realizes that living biological samples are far more valuable than simple genetic data. In his eyes, Chun Xiao himself has already become the perfect research specimen. And deep down, Professor Lin becomes certain of one thing. Chun Xiao will not be allowed to escape forever. Meanwhile, Chun watches him leave and immediately sees through the old fox completely. He realizes Professor Lin is the kind of monster who experiments on living people while still talking like some noble savior of humanity. The more Chun thinks about it, the clearer the situation becomes. If he doesn't deal with Professor Lin soon, life will never become peaceful again. At that moment, Chun quietly makes up his mind. And then he says that if Professor Lin truly wants to study evolution, then he'll show him what real evolution actually looks like. Suddenly, Jiang Chong rises back up. At the same moment, the system announcement reports that his vital signs are now stable. His adrenaline levels have surpassed the threshold. The mutation process is complete, and his sanity signal has officially dropped to 0. The moment Professor Lin sees the results, he gets excited immediately. He realizes the experiment actually succeeded. According to him, hatred, fear, and pain were the perfect catalysts all along. Then he looks at the transformed Jiang Qian and declares that he has been reborn. But the creepiest part comes right after that. Professor Lin immediately gives Jiang his very first mission. He orders him to bring Chun Xiao back alive. Meanwhile, Lin's assistant, Su Rue, is clearly disturbed by everything happening in front of her. She quietly questions whether using living humans to create monsters is really the human evolution Professor Lin always talked about. Professor Lin then asks her how it feels to participate in an experiment for the first time since joining his laboratory. But Su Rue honestly says she feels terrible. She directly points out that this is human experimentation and says they've already crossed every ethical line possible. Professor Lin immediately shuts that idea down. He coldly says ethics are meaningless once the apocalypse arrives. According to him, morality becomes a luxury in a dying world. He insists that Jiang Qian's sacrifice could create a future where more people survive. And just like that, the man officially goes from questionable scientist to definitely becoming the final boss later. Then Professor Lin personally presses the release button himself. himself. The containment doors open, and Jiang Qian is finally unleashed. Once again, Lin gives the same order. Bring Chen Xiao back alive. The second he's released, Jiang instantly starts moving like a wild beast. He charges through the city, leaping from rooftop to rooftop with terrifying speed, until he finally reaches Chen Xiao's area. But right when Jiang arrives, he suddenly notices something shocking. Chen Xiao is already standing there waiting for him, and instead of looking scared, Chen casually greets him like they just randomly met at a grocery store. He asks if it's really Jiang Qian because he barely recognizes him anymore. Then Chen jokingly wonders whether he should still call him Jiang Qian from now on, or maybe start calling him Monster Version DLC. That single line instantly sends Jiang's rage through the roof. Notifications immediately show his anger skyrocketing by 1,000 points. Struggling to even speak properly anymore, Jiang growls out that Chen Xiao is going to die. But instead of panicking, Chen notices something interesting. He realizes emotional reactions become far stronger after beast transformation, and the harvesting efficiency of those emotions has increased by over 30%. At this point, Chen is basically treating the apocalypse like a scientific farming simulator. Then Chen suddenly starts running while telling Jiang to follow him somewhere more open. He says he doesn't want to fight right outside his house because he'd rather not disturb the neighbors. And more importantly, if Jiang damages the safe house, there's absolutely no way he could afford the repair bill. Honestly, priorities. End of the world outside, but Chen is still worried about property damage. Like a raging beast, Jiang immediately chases after him. The moment he gets close enough, Chen suddenly turns around and unleashes a spatial slash attack directly at him. But to Chen's surprise, it barely works. He instantly realizes Jiang's skin has become dramatically tougher after the mutation. Jiang roars Chen Zhao's name and launches himself at him again, while Chen continues running and provoking him non-stop. Chen mocks Jiang by saying he was already all muscle and no brains before the mutation, but now he can't even speak properly anymore. That insult immediately sends Jiang's anger even higher, jumping past 1200. And Chen still isn't done. He casually adds that Jiang's current appearance is honestly really ugly. And honestly, yeah, Chen's not wrong about that one. Chen Xiao keeps provoking Jiang Qian even further. He says he has to admit Professor Lin has absolutely terrible taste, then jokes that maybe next time he should introduce Jiang to a reliable barber instead. That one comment completely detonates Jiang's emotions. His anger level instantly shoots all the way up to 2000. And then something even more terrifying starts happening. Jiang's mutation begins evolving again in real time. His body twists violently, muscles swell further, and his entire beast form becomes even more savage than before. The moment Chen sees this, even he realizes something is seriously wrong now. Suddenly, an overwhelming pressure bursts out from Jiang as he lets out a monstrous roar and charges forward like a human tank with anger management issues from hell. Then Chen finally notices the biggest problem. Bone spikes suddenly erupt from Jiang's body, and at that moment, Chen realizes things just became far more dangerous. Meanwhile, back in the laboratory, Professor Lin watches the entire fight through the monitors with growing excitement. He immediately concludes this is a second-stage mutation. According to him, intense emotional explosions can actually accelerate and catalyze evolutionary changes in the body. He quickly orders Su Rue to record every piece of data. But unlike Lin, Su Rue looks increasingly disturbed by everything she's witnessing. Deep down, she starts questioning whether this horrifying path is truly humanity's future, or just madness disguised as science. Because at this point, saving humanity is looking suspiciously similar to creating Resident Evil DLC monsters. Back on the battlefield, the fully mutated Jiang closes the distance in an instant. But instead of panicking, Chen Xiao suddenly becomes extremely calm. Even while staring down a roaring mutant covered in bone spikes, Chen quietly starts calculating his next move. The mutation keeps getting worse. More sharp bone spikes start bursting out from Jiang Qian's back, making him look less like a human and more like a nightmare somebody forgot to nerf before release. As he roars Chen Zhao's name, Jiang charges in again with full force. Chen immediately starts dodging non-stop, but even with his speed, he can't avoid every attack forever. Some of the strikes still manage to graze him. At the same time, a notification suddenly appears warning that the special cut skill has already reached 87% synchronization, while the target's energy fluctuations are continuing to rise rapidly. Chen realizes he only needs a little more, so naturally he decides to make Jiang even angrier. Chen mocks him by asking if growing a few extra bones suddenly made him think he's some kind of hedgehog now. That single insult immediately sends Jiang's anger skyrocketing again. Another 1,000 points of rage. Another 1,000 points of humiliation. At this point, Jiang is genuinely losing the last fragments of sanity he still had left. But Chen keeps going. He reminds Jiang how back in the old district, at least he had the guts to swing steel pipes at people himself. Now, after taking a few injections and mutating a little, he suddenly thinks he's some unbeatable monster. Then Chun lands the most brutal line yet. He says no matter what powers Jiang gets, he's still just a dog obeying whatever nonsense Professor Lin feeds him. That absolutely breaks him. Fury spikes by another 1700 instantly. Meanwhile, Professor Lin is practically thrilled while watching the entire fight unfold through the monitors. He excitedly observes that Zhang's emotional peak has already crossed the critical point, and his bone density keeps increasing further. Lin even starts praising Chen Xiao for helping stimulate Zhang's evolution more effectively than the laboratory itself. At this point, Chen Xiao unintentionally became the apocalypse version of an anger-farming speedrunner. Professor Lin keeps urging Zhang to get even angrier because he wants to see the limits of the mutation. But Su Rui looks more disturbed than ever. Watching the situation spiral completely out of control, she quietly wonders what Chen Xiao is really trying to do. Then suddenly, Zhang's body begins overflowing with violent energy. The pressure exploding from him starts tearing through the surrounding area as he completely descends into madness. But even now, Chun remains calm. He keeps dodging while casually asking if that's really all Jiang can do. Then he taunts him again and tells him to come at him harder if he actually has the guts. That final provocation pushes Jiang's fury all the way to 2800. And then suddenly, the system notification Chun has been waiting for finally appears. Negative emotions have officially reached the upper limit of 30,000. A new evolution becomes available. Spatial Rift, Annihilation. The system asks whether he wants to evolve immediately. Chin instantly accepts, and in the very next moment, everything changes. Using the newly evolved Spatial Rift Annihilation ability, Qian unleashes a terrifying attack that cleanly tears apart part of Zhang's body. Zhang immediately collapses, screaming in agony, desperately crying out about his hand being gone. Meanwhile, Chun calmly walks closer for another strike, like this is just another Tuesday for him now. Then, while staring directly toward the surveillance devices, Chun casually mocks Professor Lin too. He says the doctor's precious test subject really isn't that impressive and suggests sending someone stronger next time. Back in the laboratory, Professor Lin is furious at first and shouts Chun Zhao's name angrily. But then, he suddenly starts laughing instead. The more he watches Chun, the more obsessed he becomes. Professor Lin admits Chun Xiao truly is different from everyone else. And while smiling like a complete mad scientist, he promises that sooner or later, he will capture him. As Jiang Chong falls to the ground defeated, Chun Xiao walks up to him and says that seeing how pitiful he looks, he'll send him on his way himself. Then he casually adds, "You're welcome." But suddenly, another person appears nearby wearing medical gloves. Calmly clapping, he praises the scene and says it was truly splendid. The moment Chun hears the voice, he immediately turns around and asks who's there. As Chun turns around, he realizes the newcomer is Chen Shixing. Xing calmly says the scent of death is always primitive and pungent, but the battle just now was brilliant. He says this desperate era will also become an era where gods rise. As Chun quietly prepares to attack, Shixing tells him that with such precision and destructive power, he's definitely not some half-finished product created by the madman Lin Guodong. Chun immediately asks if he knows Lin Guodong and whether he's an accomplice. But Shixing says it's the opposite. He claims he came to stop Lin from creating more tragedies and reveals that he was the one who sent the anonymous warning text earlier telling Chun to stay away from Lin Guodong. Chun asks how he even got his number. Shixing casually shows a screen and explains that the ARC group has its own intelligence network, so finding that information wasn't difficult. Then he introduces himself properly and says he represents ARC to invite Chun Xiao to join them. Chun immediately realizes that in this life, his powers awakened earlier than before, which is why these people found him so quickly. Shixing continues explaining that unlike Lin Guodong, ARC doesn't create twisted mutations by overdrawing human life. Instead, they focus on evolving people while maintaining rationality and appearance. Chen asks what ARC even is. Shixing explains that ARC is an organization searching for awakened individuals. They believe the world is about to undergo massive change, and only true elites will survive the new era. According to him, Chun clearly possesses that qualification. He tells Chun they can make him stronger without turning him into some ugly monster. He says they can help him maintain his reason, control his power, transcend ordinary humans, and walk the true path toward becoming a god. Chun immediately responds by asking if Shixing is just another scam artist. That answer visibly catches Shixing off guard, and before he can react further, Chun suddenly launches an attack toward him. Shixing is clearly surprised, but Chun casually apologizes and says his hand slipped. Then he bluntly says he hates people trying to arrange his life for him. Whether it's a lunatic like Lin Guodong or hypocrites pretending to be humanity's elite, he refuses to choose either side. Chun says he only only walks his own path. He's used to surviving alone, doesn't need anyone teaching him how to live, and definitely has no interest in joining the ARC group. Instead of getting angry, Shing smiles slightly and says Chun has character. In fact, he says he appreciates him even more now. But before leaving, Shing gives one final warning. He says that in a collapsing world, growing stronger alone may keep Chun alive for a while, but not forever. As Shing leaves using his shadow-like ability, he tells Chun Xiao that when he finally realizes the limits of one person's power, the doors of the Ark will always remain open for him. Then he disappears into the darkness almost instantly. As Chun watches him leave, several notifications suddenly appear. Disdain from Chan Shing plus 99, speechlessness plus 55, surprise plus 66, and apprehension plus 50. Chun finds it interesting because Shing looked extremely calm the entire time, yet he still produced a surprising amount of negative emotion. Then Chun quietly thinks that if there truly is a limit to power, he'll simply break through it himself. But before worrying about that, Chun decides there's one thing he needs to handle first: Lin Guodong. And now, it's finally time to settle things with him. Inside an abandoned building, Chan Xiao carefully moves forward and soon discovers countless horrifying experimental subjects hidden inside. The moment he sees them, he immediately realizes this is one of Lin Guodong's secret laboratories. Looking around at the twisted experiments, Chun thinks the whole place is disgusting and deserves to be burned down before it creates even more tragedies. But suddenly, Lin Guodong appears and calmly welcomes Chun, saying he knew Chun would eventually come. According to Lin, someone as perfect as Chun could never willingly live an ordinary life forever. Lin then mentions Jiang Chang's defeat and says that although he died, his death was worthwhile because it successfully brought Chun here. He asks whether Chun has finally thought things through and if he's ready to dedicate himself to humanity's great evolution. Chun is immediately disgusted by everything he hears. Lin continues ranting about rational evolution, controlled evolution, and humanity's future. He even mocks Chun Shing and the ARC group, calling them hypocrites pretending to act like gods. According to Lin, every step of human progress has always been built on sacrifices, bloodshed, and corpses. He insists Chen's ability is a gift that shouldn't be wasted on ordinary mortal concerns. But Chen honestly could not care less. He bluntly asks Lin if he's finally done talking because humanity's progress has nothing to do with him. Chen says he has zero interest in Lin's twisted ideals or experiments. Then Chen's power slowly begins building up around him as he calmly says that since Lin disturbed his peaceful life, the only thing left to do now is make him disappear. But Lin simply smirks and pulls out a remote control. He says Chen is still too young and naive. If he dared invite Chen here personally, then naturally he already prepared a way to keep him trapped. Lin also reminds Chen that after his battle against Jiang Chang, his stamina should already be heavily depleted. He tells Chen it would be smarter to obediently stay by his side instead of suffering unnecessary pain later. Chen coldly asks what happens if he refuses. The moment Chen says that, Lin presses the button. Instantly, explosions erupt around the building, shattering glass everywhere. Then, as the smoke clears and Chen opens his eyes again, countless mutated monsters similar to Jiang Chang begin emerging from all directions, roaring toward him. Lin calmly orders Chen to become his next test subject while the monsters rush forward together. But Chen immediately starts fighting back, unleashing spatial slashes one after another and cutting through the creatures as they attack him non-stop. Even while battling, Lin keeps trying to persuade him, telling Chen to stay there because he can make him even stronger. But Chen mocks him, saying Lin really thinks a few brainless monsters are enough to stop him. Still, deep down, Chen realizes his stamina is dropping rapidly after fighting wave after wave of mutants. And because of that, he knows he needs to end this battle quickly. Then Chun Xiao starts condensing his spatial slashing power directly into his hands like a blade and begins cutting through all the monsters around him one after another. Even though the non-stop fighting starts draining his stamina, he still manages to wipe out every last creature in the room. After the final monster falls, Chun looks at Professor Lin and mockingly says he thought Lin was actually capable of something. Chun points out that Lin really believed 3 monsters would be enough to keep him trapped there. Then he says Professor Lin is the truly naive one and that he wasted 40 or 50 years of his life for nothing. With that, Chun slowly walks toward him and coldly says it's over now and that he'll personally send him on his way. For the first time, Professor Lin finally looks genuinely shaken. He collapses to his knees coughing heavily, but even then, he still starts laughing. Lin tells Chun that even if he kills him now, it won't change anything because all the mutation reagent data has already been sent out. According to him, the seeds have already been planted, and this world is only going to become more chaotic and interesting from now on. Even while dying, the man still sounds like somebody announcing a season finale teaser. Chun is briefly caught off guard by those words, but Lin continues speaking and warns Chun that in his current injured state, he probably won't even make it home alive. But right at that moment, another voice suddenly appears nearby. Chun instantly turns alert and realizes it's Su Rue, Professor Lin's assistant. Before Chun can react further. Su Rui quickly tells him not to be nervous because she means no harm. She explains that she brought repair fluid capable of quickly stopping bleeding and stabilizing injuries. However, the moment she tries handing it over, Chun immediately becomes cautious. After everything that happened with Lin Guodong, there's no way he can trust anything related to that laboratory so easily. Chun looks at Su Rui suspiciously while she explains that the medicine is safe. She warns him that if he doesn't use it soon, the wound could get infected very quickly. Chun immediately asks why he should trust her. After all, Lin Guodong just died, and now she suddenly appears offering medicine. To him, the timing feels way too suspicious. Su Rui calmly says it's normal for him not to trust her, but then she tells him there are some things he may still need. She says if he still has the strength, he can follow her. Then she leads him into a large storage room. Inside, Su Rui explains that Lin Guodong predicted long ago the extreme heat would never go away. Everything stored there was secretly prepared for himself. According to her, Lin always claimed he was dedicating himself to science, but in reality, he feared death more than anyone else. Now that Lin is dead, she says he no longer needs any of it. She tells Chun to take whatever he wants and consider it an apology on Lin Guodong's behalf. Chun then asks if she's planning to leave. Su Rui explains that she originally became Lin Guodong's graduate student because she once genuinely admired him as a scientist, but only recently did she discover he had been conducting human experiments. Even if she didn't participate directly, she still feels like an accomplice now. She says she plans to head north to a research institute and continue the kind of research that should actually be done. If she survives long enough, she wants to develop a real antidote someday instead of creating poisons that turn people into monsters. Before leaving, she says she hopes that if they ever meet again, the world will at least be a little more decent than it is now. As she walks away, Chun silently looks around the room at all the supplies Lin prepared for himself. Sun protection suits, antibiotics, water purification tablets, and countless survival resources. Chun immediately realizes Lin Guodong planned everything for his own survival from the very beginning. Too bad for him. All of it belongs to Chun now. Without hesitation, Chun stores everything into his inventory space and says he's already taken what he needs, so there's no reason to stay there any longer. Then he burns the entire laboratory down before finally returning to his safe house. Back home, Chun notices the outside temperature has already surpassed 58 degrees Celsius. At the same time, the Global Meteorological Bureau issues another worldwide red alert. Reports say temperatures in many regions have exceeded 58 degrees, while the melting permafrost has released massive amounts of methane into the atmosphere. Experts now warn that the greenhouse effect has entered an irreversible cycle. Meanwhile, ordinary people everywhere are starting to wonder if these nightmare days will ever end. But inside his safe house, Chun remains relatively calm, until a notification suddenly appears saying his current balance of negative emotion points is insufficient to upgrade his spatial ability further. Chun thinks that his supplies are enough for now, but the outside environment will only keep getting worse. If he wants to survive, he needs to become stronger as quickly as possible. And right now, water has basically become hard currency, which means it's the perfect time for him to collect some emotion tax. Inside his storage space, mountains of bottled water are piled up everywhere. Then, in the chat, Chun messages Mukong and asks how the water sales are going and whether he needs more stock delivered. Mukong immediately replies that Chun really is a lifesaver because everything is already sold out again. He says he'll meet Chun tonight and bring more goods for trading. Later that night, the two meet in a hidden location. Chun casually comments that Mukong picked a pretty secretive place for the deal. Mukong proudly says it's all part of professional standards. Since water is desperately needed now, Mukong quickly asks how much he can trade for the supplies he brought. Chun calmly says that logically speaking, the goods should be worth at least 2 bottles of water. But then he takes a look at Mukong and says he's actually a very reasonable person, so he'll trade for 1 bottle instead. The moment Mukong hears that, he's instantly speechless. But Chun notices the reaction immediately and asks if he's angry now. Then he casually says the price has officially gone up again. Still 1 bottle, but now Mukong also has to call him Brother Xiao and praise him as a great philanthropist. That instantly generates another burst of anger points. Mukong clearly doesn't want to say it, but Chun immediately threatens to raise the price again if he keeps hesitating. Left with no choice, Mukong finally gives in and awkwardly thanks Brother Xiao for being such a great philanthropist. Chun immediately acts satisfied and praises him like he's training a pet. Then he casually says that if Mukong brings even more supplies next time, maybe he'll generously allow him to trade for half a bottle. And just like that, even more fury points get harvested. Chun is basically turning emotional damage into passive income at this point. Meanwhile, elsewhere in the complex, Grandpa Wong is still awake late at night carrying bottles bottles of water. Chun notices him and asks why he's still outside so late. Grandpa Wang explains that Auntie Lin from a nearby building is raising her grandson alone, and the child is suffering badly from heatstroke. With the water and electricity constantly getting cut off, she can't manage everything herself, so he decided to bring her some water. Chun warns him that water has become incredibly precious now and says Grandpa Wang should focus on protecting himself first. But Grandpa Wang simply says he's already old and has lived long enough. He just can't bear watching children suffer. Then he personally delivers the water to Auntie Lin. The woman immediately acts extremely grateful, praising Grandpa Wang like he's some living saint and thanking him non-stop. Grandpa Wang simply tells her to hurry and give the water to the child. But the moment he leaves, her entire expression changes. She secretly complains that the old man took forever just to bring 2 bottles of water, and even thinks about crying even harder tomorrow so she can scam more supplies out of him later. Yeah. Turns out the real survival skill in the apocalypse might just be shameless acting. Then she walks into another room where a man named Mr. Zhao is waiting. He asks why she's still up so late. The woman immediately hands over the water and calmly says it's today's offering. Mukong suddenly looks worried while checking his phone. Chun notices immediately and asks what's wrong. Mukong shows him a message saying the trade has been cancelled. Chun is surprised because this is already the 3rd canceled deal in a row. Mukong says it's not normal anymore and feels like someone is deliberately targeting them. And right at that moment, a group of people suddenly appears nearby, pointing directly at Chen Xiao. Holding a bottle of water, Chun casually asks if they're looking for him. The group instantly gets aggressive. One of them accuses Chun of illegally selling water in private, while another angrily agrees beside him. Then their leader steps forward dramatically and declares that Chun is corrupting people with evil things like commercial bottled water and says his sins are extremely serious. Chun immediately fires back by asking if commercial water is evil, then what exactly are they drinking instead? That line instantly embarrasses the entire group. Some of them angrily shout back, asking how Chun dares accuse them of drinking piss. The leader quickly regains composure and introduces them as believers of the Clearwater Society. According to him, all bottled water is obtained by exploiting Earth's resources, and only water purified by Lord Zhao Qian can cleanse humanity of its sins. Then he demands Chun hand over all his water as an offering to Lord Zhao Qian. Chun is completely confused by the nonsense. The leader then launches into a full cult speech, claiming the global heatwave is divine punishment for humanity destroying nature. He says only restraint and faith can earn forgiveness, while Zhao Qian supposedly acts as God's representative on Earth. Another believer warns Chun that if he refuses to offer his water, divine punishment will eventually fall on him too. Then they try inviting him to join the Clearwater Society. Chun immediately realizes what's happening and says he finally understands now. It's just a bunch of weak-minded people who got tricked into joining a cult. That statement instantly enrages the group again. The leader insists Chun only speaks like this because he hasn't personally witnessed Lord Zhao Qian's divine powers yet. According to him, anyone who sees Zhao Qian with their own eyes will eventually kneel and worship him. Even Mukong can't help commenting that these people are talking complete nonsense. Then Chun casually asks them to repeat what they said earlier about bottled water bringing divine punishment. And before anyone can stop him, he calmly opens the bottle and takes a huge drink right in front of them. Then he lets out a satisfied breath and casually says it's incredibly refreshing. The leader angrily says Chun Xiao is hopelessly foolish for even spilling precious water onto the ground and warns that karma will punish him sooner or later. At the same time, Chen's system notifications start popping up again. Anger plus 45, disgust plus 38, and powerlessness plus 27. Chun casually says that enjoying good things alone isn't as fun as sharing them together. Then he suddenly proposes a deal. Since these people worship Zhao Qian like a god, whoever curses Zhao Qian first will receive a full bucket of water from him. 1 insult equals 1 bucket. The moment they hear that, the leader completely explodes and accuses Chun of blasphemy. His anger instantly shoots up again. But unlike the leader, the followers behind him immediately start hesitating. Some of them quietly ask whether Chun is actually serious about giving water away. Chun calmly says a promise made is a promise kept. The leader instantly panics and yells at everyone to shut up. But thirst wins faster than faith. One of the followers suddenly blurts out that Zhao Qian is a son of a bitch. And just like that, the entire holy atmosphere collapses in 1 second flat. The furious leader immediately orders the others to restrain the man, but the follower desperately screams that he just wants water because he genuinely can't endure the heat anymore. Chun watches the whole thing and calmly concludes that the guy simply wasn't fortunate enough to enjoy his water after all. Soon after, the group drags the struggling follower away and leaves. Wukong lets out a relieved breath and says they scared him for a moment, but at least they didn't seem to seriously hurt the guy. But Chun immediately says it's not that simple. According to him, this matter is far from over. If the Clearwater Society continues interfering with their water business, then eventually they'll have no choice but to uproot the entire organization completely. Still, Chun realizes simply killing them by force would create even bigger backlash among desperate survivors. After all, he still needs people around to keep farming negative emotions. So instead, Chun decides to first investigate what kind of person Zhao Qian truly is. Later, Chun secretly observes one of the Clearwater Society gatherings. Inside, he sees Zhao Qian dramatically pouring water over a woman suffering from heat stroke, while everyone watches in awe. And somehow, after only a tiny amount of water touches her, the woman immediately starts recovering and standing back up. The surrounding believers instantly become even more fanatical. They praise Zhao Qian nonstop and swear they'll follow him forever. Watching everything carefully from the shadows, Chun starts thinking something feels very wrong here. Either that woman was planted there beforehand as part of the act, or Zhao Qian might actually be one of the awakened. One woman gratefully kneels before Zhao Qian and says she can never repay his life-saving kindness. She even begs to stay by his side and serve him forever. Zhao Qian immediately puts on a holy act and says God remembers everyone willing to dedicate themselves, while greedy people will eventually be punished. According to him, the heatwave apocalypse is God's way of filtering humanity, and only true believers deserve to survive. Then he tells everyone to hand over their impure water so he can purify it for them. And unbelievably, people actually start giving him their water. At that moment, one of the followers suddenly notices Chan Shao nearby and angrily says impure people aren't allowed inside. But instead of arguing, Chen instantly switches into acting mode. He pretends to panic and says he was blind before. He says the outside world is getting hotter every day, water is disappearing, and he's terrified of dying like a dog. Then, right in front of everyone, he dramatically begs God to save him and says he's willing to hand over all his dirty water. The second Chen reveals the huge amount of bottled water he brought. The entire crowd gets shocked. Even Zhao Qian himself pauses for a moment. Then he calmly says he's heard of Chun Shao before, and that Chen's sins are indeed very serious. However, since Chun is supposedly willing to repent, God is naturally willing to forgive a lost soul. But while pretending to submit, Chun is secretly analyzing everything. He realizes Zhao Qian is taking away almost all of these people's water, and only giving back the bare minimum needed to survive while calling it holy water. Honestly, this cult has better profit margins than most businesses. Chun quietly thinks that at this rate, these people probably won't even survive another month. Still acting obedient, Chun steps closer and politely thanks Lord Zhao Qian. But right then, another man suddenly runs into the gathering in panic. He shouts that something terrible happened to Auntie Yun's granddaughter. The child suddenly fainted, her face turned purple, and it looks like severe heat stroke. Auntie Yun immediately panics and says the girl was completely fine during the daytime. She even insists she gave the child holy water earlier. The moment Chun hears that, he suddenly realizes something. Back when Auntie Yun claimed her granddaughter had heat stroke before, she was probably lying just to scam Grandpa Wang out of more water. Now karma basically pulled up with instant delivery service. Auntie Yun immediately starts begging Zhao Qian to save the child and promises to double her offerings if he helps. But Zhao Qian coldly says there's no need to panic because God is not some babysitter. Then he shamelessly claims the only reason the holy water failed is because Auntie Yun herself wasn't devout enough. The woman desperately tries to argue, saying she already believed sincerely, but Zhao Qian immediately cuts her off and tells her to stop making excuses and reflect on herself properly instead. Then, in front of everyone, Zhao Qian confidently announces that tomorrow at noon, he will perform a true miracle for everyone to witness with their own eyes. Another follower gratefully thanks Lord Zhao Qian, while Chun Shao silently keeps observing everything around him. A nearby member then hands Chun an armband and tells him to put it on. From now on, he officially belongs to the Clearwater Society. Since Chun donated so much water, Lord Zhao Qian is willing to forgive his past sins, but he should never forget them. Chun casually agrees and puts on the band without resistance. But internally, he's already laughing at all of them. What these people don't realize is that Chun secretly installed transmitters inside the water containers before bringing them over. And now, the tracking signal is leading him straight to the real storage area. Using his spatial ability, Chun quietly slips deeper inside and secretly opens a hidden door. Behind behind it, he discovers a massive stockpile filled with useful supplies and bottled water. At that moment, Chun immediately understands the truth. There is no such thing as holy water. The entire Clearwater Society is just a giant scam operation. But before he can investigate further, he suddenly hears voices nearby. A weak woman nervously calls out to Zhao Qian, but before she can finish speaking, Zhao Qian immediately starts beating her angrily. He scolds her for acting too sickly earlier while pretending to be a recovered patient in front of the crowd. According to him, her performance wasn't convincing enough at all. The woman apologizes and explains that using her ability drains too much of her physical energy. The moment Chun hears the word ability, everything clicks together instantly. Zhao Qian curses her uselessly and reminds her not to forget who dragged her out of hell in the first place. And right there, Chun finally understands the entire trick. That woman is the real awakened one. Zhao Qian is simply exploiting her power to fake miracles and manipulate desperate people into worshipping him. As the woman quietly agrees with Zhao Qian again, Chun suddenly smiles to himself, because now he's just thought of something very interesting. That night, Chun Shao secretly approaches the weakened woman and tosses a bottle beside her. Startled, she immediately asks who he is. Chun simply tells her to drink it first. If she survives the night, she'll naturally learn his identity later. The next day, huge crowds gather again around Zhao Qian and the woman as another miracle ceremony begins. Sitting proudly in front of everyone, Zhao Qian declares that as long as people keep faith in God, even the scorching heat of the sun cannot harm God's messenger. And thanks to the woman secretly using her awakened ability again, the crowd genuinely starts believing him. People begin crying emotionally, convinced they're witnessing a real miracle. Watching from the back, Chun immediately realizes it's exactly the trick he suspected. Zhao Qian is simply using the awakened woman's supernatural ability to deceive desperate survivors. But then Chun starts wondering something else. What if her ability can be interfered with using spatial power? The moment that idea appears, Chun quietly activates his ability. Almost instantly, the woman's expression changes. She suddenly realizes someone is interfering with her power remotely. At the same time, Zhao Qian immediately starts feeling the brutal heat himself. His calm expression collapses instantly, and he angrily demands to know what the woman is doing. Panicking, she explains that someone is secretly disrupting her ability, and she can no longer maintain the effect on him from such a distance. But Zhao Qian doesn't care at all. He orders her to stand directly beside him because no matter what happens, the miracle must continue in front of the crowd. The woman immediately realizes the problem. In this terrifying heat, with her weak physical condition, stepping fully outside would probably kill her within minutes. Meanwhile, hidden among the crowd, Chun quietly watches everything unfold and realizes the plan is already working perfectly. As Zhao Qian keeps screaming at her to hurry over, the woman finally snaps internally. Through tears and exhaustion, she suddenly thinks about killing Zhao Qian and taking control of the entire area herself instead. Then she secretly approaches Chun Shao from behind and tells him it's not too late for him to stand on her side instead. And without warning, she abandons Zhao Qian completely and walks straight toward Chun. Zhao Qian instantly explodes in rage, shouting at her and calling her trash while demanding to know where she thinks she's going. But she ignores him completely. Then, standing beside Chun, she suddenly embraces him. Chun is immediately surprised and jokingly asks if her attitude really changed that quickly. The woman then calmly reveals her awakened ability. She explains that she can forcibly accelerate heat dissipation from a target's body, rapidly transferring heat outward. Chun casually comments that it sounds like a pretty convenient power. But then the woman quietly reveals the terrifying second use of that same ability. Instead of dispersing heat from the whole body evenly, she can specifically force heat dissipation only from the target's head and heart. And when the heat leaves those areas too quickly, blood supply to the brain suddenly collapses. The moment she explains it, Chun instantly feels dizzy. And right then, the woman finally reveals her true nature. Not a helpless victim, but a monster hiding behind a pitiful face the entire time. Then we see Lin Jing wandering outside during the daytime as her memories begin flashing back. In one memory, she's holding a dying cat in her arms, desperately begging it not to die. But suddenly, someone nearby opens a window and angrily yells at her to get back inside immediately. The man cruelly reminds her that he worked hard to raise her, so now it's finally time for her to repay him by making other people happy in exchange for water. Lin Jing desperately begs him to let her go. And right then, Zhao Qian suddenly appears. After seeing the disgusting situation, he coldly says the whole thing makes him sick. Then he beats the man down without hesitation. Afterward, Zhao Qian tells Lin Jing that he saw the cat she was holding earlier come back to life. He calls her power a gift from God and invites her to come with him so they can save more lives together. And that's how Lin Jing ended up beside Zhao Qian. Back in the present, Zhao Qian continues acting like some holy savior while forcing people to kneel properly and show respect to Lord Zhao Qian. At that moment, Chen Xiao suddenly makes his move. While kneeling, he instantly uses a slash attack to take one of Zhao Qian's men down. The crowd immediately panics and starts calling Chen a devil. But Chen stands up and coldly tells everyone these people were gangsters long before the apocalypse even started. Stealing water, arson, extortion, they already committed every crime imaginable before pretending to become holy messengers. He warns everyone that believing people like this will ruin their lives completely. Then Mu Kong arrives and throws out intel exposing Zhao Qian's gang. But even after seeing the evidence, many of the believers still refuse to accept reality. They insist Chen is lying. At that moment, another girl named Ling suddenly appears behind the crowd. The moment her aunt sees her, she becomes overjoyed and immediately says this proves Zhao Qian's miracle is real because Ling fully recovered after their devout prayers last night. Other believers immediately agree and demand Chen be subdued as a demon. But Ling suddenly snaps and asks whether everyone there has completely lost their minds. Even her own mother looks shocked hearing her speak like that. Then Ling directly points at Chen Xiao and reveals the truth in front of everyone. She says the person who actually saved her wasn't Zhao Qian at all, but Chen Xiao. According to her, Chun gave her an electrolyte drink and saved her life. Otherwise, she would have died in bed because of everyone's blind superstition. The crowd instantly falls silent. But before anyone can react properly, Zhao Qian suddenly lashes out in rage and attacks Lin Jing directly, screaming that she's trash who couldn't even properly endure a miracle. Chen saves her. Zhao Qian immediately realizes Chen Xiao is awakened too. He figures out Chen must have used his ability earlier to block Lin Jing's power from affecting him. Chen calmly says it's finally time to end this entire farce once and for all. But instead of panicking, Zhao Qian suddenly starts laughing crazily. Then he pulls out an injection and stabs himself with it. As his body begins transforming violently, Chen instantly recognizes the substance. It's Lin Guodong's mutation reagent. The next second, Zhao Qian rushes at Chen at full speed while screaming that the immune enhancer cost him an absolute fortune. He roars that Chen should just go to hell already. The transformed Zhao Qian becomes dramatically faster and immediately tackles Chen straight off the building. As both of them start falling, Zhao Qian finally vents all the resentment he buried for years. He says that as someone from a poor rural village who fought his way into a prestigious university through pure studying, he could never compete against the academic elites and powerful insiders. According to him, his research was stolen, his youth was wasted, and he never had any chance to rise again. But then the high-temperature apocalypse arrived and reshuffled the entire world. For the first time, he finally saw an opportunity to stand above everyone else. And in his eyes, Chen Xiao ruined that dream completely. So Zhao Qian screams that Chen deserves to die with him. But right at that critical moment, Chen's system suddenly activates again. A notification appears announcing a newly unlocked ability, Spatial Warp, and instantly Chen uses it. In the middle of the fall, Chen suddenly warps himself safely away while Zhao Qian continues plummeting downward alone. Zhao Qian can only stare in disbelief before crashing straight into the ground. Watching from above, Chen coldly thinks Zhao Qian was truly pathetic. And if Zhao Qian really wants to blame someone, then he should blame the fact that he chose the wrong person to provoke. As the crowd sees Chen Xiao standing there alive, they immediately panic and start calling him an evil sorcerer and a demon. But Chen completely ignores them and calmly walks toward Lin Jing instead. After checking her condition, he realizes there's no bleeding and concludes she only fainted from exhaustion and shock. Then Chen pulls out a bottle of water. The moment the crowd sees that, they instantly start screaming that he's not allowed to save her because he's a demon. Even Auntie Yun loses control and blames Lin Jing for Zhao Qian's death, calling her a curse who bewitched him. But Chen coldly warns everyone not to block his path. Instead of backing down, the believers suddenly surround him together. Holding each other's hands, they start crazily chanting prayers non-stop about thanking God and how God nourishes the earth. At this point, the entire group honestly looks less like believers and more like an overheating cult Wi-Fi signal trying to reconnect. Meanwhile, Chun completely ignores the madness and kneels beside Lin Jing. As she weakly tries to speak, Chun tells her she's extremely weak right now and that if she wants to survive, she needs to drink the water. Still half-conscious, Lin Jing immediately asks where Zhao Qian is. Chun casually tells her he's dead and even asks if she wants to see him one last time. Around that moment, Ling suddenly notices her grandmother nearby and excitedly calls out to her. But the old woman looks completely broken mentally. She mutters that if God was fake all along, then she has nothing left to rely on anymore. And before anyone can stop her, the grandmother suddenly jumps to her death. Ling immediately breaks down crying, but Chun comforts her. Through tears, Ling says she won't follow the same path as her grandmother. According to her, the old woman chose ignorance and abandoned both herself and her family. But Ling says she wants to keep living properly no matter what. After everything settles down, Chun brings Ling and Lin Jing back with him to the safe house. Later, Lin Jing quietly admits that she always believed Zhao Qian was her savior. But in reality, he only wanted to exploit her awakened ability to manipulate people and commit horrible acts. She explains that because she awakened supernatural powers, Zhao Qian constantly feared and envied her at the same time. She even remembers him angrily shouting before about how unfair it was that she awakened instead of him. Thinking back on everything leaves Lin Jing visibly upset. But Chun simply says Zhao Qian was always a pathetic person. Before the apocalypse, he couldn't break into the academic elite circles he obsessed over. After the apocalypse, he still failed to become truly awakened. And in the end, he died full of resentment and unwillingness like a miserable worm. Lin Jing quietly thanks Chen Xiao and admits that she was terrified the entire time. She says her original intention was always to help people, but somehow she unknowingly became someone who harmed others instead. Then Ling suddenly says it's strange that Lin Jing was so beautiful and completely devoted to Zhao Qian, yet he still shot her in the end. That comment instantly makes Lin Jing think about a strange rumor she once heard. For a second, she even wonders whether Zhao Qian might actually have been into men instead. But then she awkwardly laughs the thought off and tells herself there definitely can't be another Zhao Qian in this world. Meanwhile, Chun silently thinks that, in this chaotic apocalypse, simply protecting himself alone is no longer enough. If he wants real control and safety, he'll eventually need to take over this entire area to some extent. So Chun publicly announces that although Zhao Qian is dead, a huge amount of water resources the cult secretly hoarded still remains. He openly says he could have kept everything for himself since he was the one who destroyed the cult. However, as long as everyone listens to him, he's willing to distribute the water fairly. The moment people hear that, they become overjoyed and immediately start thanking Chen Xiao non-stop. Some even begin calling him Lord Chen Xiao already. But deep down, many of them are still suspicious and secretly wonder what Chen Xiao is really planning. Meanwhile, Chun simply watches everyone silently without explaining anything further. Later on, inside a restricted building area marked unauthorized personnel prohibited, Chun meets with several residents. One of them nervously confirms whether the document in front of him is really a property transfer agreement. Chun calmly says he's happy to do business with them and tells them to go collect their water afterward. Another man immediately realizes what Chun is doing and asks if he's seriously planning to monopolize the entire building. Chun casually confirms it without hesitation. According to him, having only a single floor as a safe house is nowhere near enough anymore. So now, he plans to transform the entire building into a full-scale doomsday fortress. The man explains that in the previous life, the air temperature eventually reached 56 degrees while ground temperatures climbed all the way to 78. Everything became unbelievably terrible. Chun immediately realizes the situation is becoming even more dangerous than expected. He starts wondering how buildings themselves will even survive under temperatures like that. The man continues explaining that a second heat wave will arrive soon, and this next one will be even more brutal than the current disaster. According to him, the steel reinforcements inside high-rise buildings will begin softening, eventually causing entire structures to collapse. That's exactly why retrofitting the whole building has now become absolutely necessary. Fortunately, after everything that happened with Zhao Qian's cult, the residents around here already trust Chen Xiao. After carefully weighing the situation, they all agreed to move under his arrangements. At the same time, a news report suddenly announces that after 30 straight days of extreme heat, temperatures are finally expected to temporarily decrease. However, the report warns this relief may only be temporary, and the heat wave could rebound again soon. Citizens are advised to stay prepared. Chun immediately thinks they might as well remove the word may entirely because the next disaster is definitely coming. Still, at least everyone can finally breathe for a short while. Later, on Luochang Street, people begin walking outside again for the first time in ages. Everyone looks relieved just to experience slightly cooler weather. One woman even says it feels like she hasn't breathed fresh air in over a year. But while everyone else relaxes, Chun looks upward seriously and realizes he has to use this temporary break wisely. If he wants to survive the next heat wave, he needs to finish upgrading the building as quickly as possible. Meanwhile, nearby, Ling is casually eating chips while staying completely relaxed. Chun looks at her and bluntly asks when she plans to leave. Ling immediately jokes that he's trying to kick her out already. Then she casually points her finger and instantly zaps a massive mosquito nearby. Even she comments that the mosquitoes are becoming ridiculously huge now. Watching this, Chun silently realizes realize just how valuable her awakened ability actually is. Generators require huge amounts of diesel, while solar panels become inefficient under extreme heat, which means having an awakened capable of generating electricity is incredibly important. So after thinking it through, Chun finally tells Ling she can stay as long as she wants. Ling immediately looks satisfied with herself. A little later, Ling says she's going to check how Lin Jing is doing with moving into the building. Chun casually calls out to her, but then decides to follow along himself. Deep down, he knows Lin Jing's forced heat dissipation ability is extremely useful. Even though he invited her here partly for protection, another reason is that keeping her nearby makes it much easier for him to use her ability when needed. And just before leaving, Ling suddenly realizes she forgot to bring a housewarming gift. Meanwhile, Chun walks ahead by himself and knocks on Lin Jing's door. But after waiting for a moment, he realizes the door is actually unlocked. As he steps inside, he suddenly sees Lin Jing just coming out of the bath. Instantly, both of them scream at the same time. Chun immediately panics and blurts out that he seriously didn't do it on purpose and asks why she didn't lock the door. From inside, Lin Jing quickly fires back that he still hasn't even given her the key yet. Standing awkwardly outside afterward, Chun can only think that this situation became troublesome really fast. Trying to change the topic, Chun asks Lin Jing whether she'll regret moving here with him someday, even though he was the one who invited her. Then he awkwardly adds whether she's worried he might secretly be some kind of beast too. From behind the door, Lin Jing quietly says she knows Chun wants to use her ability. But even so, she chooses to believe that while Chun fights for his own interests, he'll still maintain his bottom line as a person. Chun stays silent for a second before admitting nobody can really predict what people will become in the future. Right then, Ling suddenly arrives carrying the gift boxes and immediately asks what the two of them are even doing out there. And just like that, the awkward atmosphere instantly gets interrupted. Soon after, all of them head inside together. Meanwhile, Chun silently realizes that Lin Jing has now officially started staying by his side. She even begins helping manage the redistribution of the water resources confiscated from Zhao Qian's cult. And for Lin Jing, this might also be her own way of making up for the harm she unintentionally caused before. 7 days after the high temperatures temporarily eased, people are finally able to roam outside again. Some are even singing while watering plants and trying to enjoy a bit of normal life returning. Inside Qin Zhao's building, the residents have already started settling in floor by floor. Grandpa Wang and Lin Jing are living on the second floor. On the third floor, Mukong and Li Yuyu moved in, and Mukong happily says places with working AC really are the most comfortable places left in the world. Meanwhile, on the fourth floor, Ling is casually playing video games like the apocalypse is just background noise at this point. Above them all, Chun Xiao quietly observes everything while thinking seriously about the future. Although he already used the temporary cooling period to upgrade the building's internal wiring and systems, the resources needed to fully transform the entire building into a true defensive fortress are far beyond what an ordinary person can gather. On top of that, even his funds are starting to become limited. While thinking about this, Chun suddenly notices a suspicious group moving around outside. One of the men says he heard this area has a huge supply of water, and that one single person supposedly controls an entire building here. The group's leader immediately mocks how arrogant someone must be to dominate territory in Little Luocheng. Then he casually says they should just take it by force. At this point, out-of-town gangs have already begun entering the city. During the temporary pause in the heat wave, criminals everywhere started becoming more active again. But unfortunately for them, they picked the wrong apartment complex. After Chan Xiao personally crushed several violent groups and displayed his powers multiple times, even the newly arrived gangs quickly learned to keep their distance from his territory. Meanwhile, at a temporary government command center, several officials are gathered around a digital map analyzing the city's situation. One commander notices something strange. According to him, order across Luocheng has already started collapsing completely, yet one apartment complex remains unusually peaceful and stable. Then he suddenly realizes that area is the same location where Zhao Qian's cult was wiped out earlier. Immediately, he orders his people to investigate further. One officer responds that under the current circumstances, they barely have enough manpower to deal with major disasters already, so ordinary gang conflicts shouldn't be their priority. But the commander disagrees. He says his instincts tell him the situation there is far more complicated than a normal gang dispute. According to him, the heat wave already destroyed normal human society, but Luocheng now contains too many strange incidents that go far beyond ordinary chaos. Something unusual is hiding beneath the surface. Then one of the female officers reports that they've successfully recovered surveillance footage from the church incident in Luocheng, the same day the casualties occurred. And she says there are several scenes the commander needs to personally confirm himself. As the government officers review the surveillance footage, they suddenly witness Chen Xiao fighting Zhao Qian before instantly disappearing midair. One officer is completely shocked and says Chen vanished in an instant, only to suddenly reappear safely on a rooftop moments later. The commander immediately realizes this is far beyond anything normal and orders an investigation team to move out immediately. Soon after, multiple soldiers quietly surround Chen Zhao's apartment complex during the night. They report that the target building has been locked down successfully. As they approach, they quickly discover Chen's electric defense grid protecting the area. After carefully bypassing the trap systems, they continue advancing deeper inside the building. Eventually, they reach a locked electronic door. With a few quick hacking attempts and a final beep, the security finally unlocks. But the moment they enter, the first thing they see completely catches them off guard. Inside is Ling casually playing games. Even Ling herself gets startled and immediately wonders whether she's been gaming so much that she started hallucinating armed soldiers now. One of the soldiers looks equally confused and asks why there's randomly a little girl inside this heavily fortified building. But their squad leader immediately orders them to subdue her first no matter what. The moment Ling hears that, she instantly gets annoyed. In her mind, a bunch of strangers breaking into somebody's home in the middle of the night is unbelievably rude. So without hesitation, she activates her electric powers and angrily asks whether these people have any manners at all. But right after attacking, Ling suddenly realizes something important. What if these people are actually government soldiers? Then she immediately starts panicking internally and wonders whether using lightning powers on military personnel counts as getting arrested anymore during the apocalypse. At that exact moment, Chen Xiao also walks out after hearing the commotion. He confusedly asks what everyone is doing in the middle of the night before suddenly realizing Ling still hasn't gone back to her own room yet. Ling awkwardly looks at the armed soldiers surrounding them and quietly says it seems they might have a little problem now. Then Chen finally notices the entire squad standing there too. And for probably the first time in a while, even Chen Xiao is genuinely stunned. All he can think is, holy crap. About 30 minutes after the Special Forces team loses contact, the military finally arrives in full force. Helicopters appear overhead while tanks completely surround Chen Zhao's apartment complex. Using a loudspeaker, the commander orders Chen Xiao to immediately surrender and release their captured personnel. Otherwise, the military will begin a forceful intervention. The massive noise instantly wakes everyone inside the building. Residents start looking out their windows in shock after seeing tanks and soldiers surrounding the entire area. Mu Kong nearly loses his mind seeing the military outside, while Ling also rushes over asking what even happened. Even Grandpa Wang comes out confused, wondering why the army suddenly arrived here. But Chun calmly tells everyone to stay inside their rooms because he'll handle the situation himself. Then Chun walks outside alone and immediately confronts the commander. He points out that the soldiers were the ones who broke into his home first in the middle of the night and asks them to explain themselves. The commander directly reveals they already reviewed the church incident footage from earlier. Then he asks Chun whether he possesses supernatural powers. Chun silently stares at him without answering. The commander continues speaking and says it seems the rumors about superpowered individuals were actually true after all. According to him, abilities like Chen's are extremely valuable, especially during a disaster like this. Then he says that if Chun is willing to cooperate with the military's research program, they can pretend tonight's conflict never happened. The moment Chun hears the word research, he immediately understands where this is going. He asks whether they simply want to lock him inside a laboratory somewhere. Then he laughs and bluntly says he has zero interest in cooperating. But the commander's attitude instantly turns colder. He says he wasn't asking for Chen's opinion, he was informing him. Chun calmly responds that he doesn't repeat himself twice. The commander immediately gives the order to fire, and in the next second, tanks unleash their attacks toward Chun Xiao all at once. But right before the explosions hit, Chun suddenly creates a massive spatial shield that blocks everything instantly. The soldiers are completely horrified because none of them expected a human being to stop tank fire head-on. Then Chun calmly says they can have the attacks back, and with a single motion, he redirects all the explosives straight back toward the military forces. Massive explosions erupt everywhere as even one of the helicopters gets blown out of the sky. The commander can barely believe what he's witnessing. He asks if this overwhelming defense is also part of Chen's powers. Chun coldly replies that next time, he won't just aim at their equipment. At that point, the commander finally realizes continuing the fight would be suicide, so he immediately announces their surrender. But before leaving, he gives Chun one final warning. According to the latest latest Meteorological Bureau report, the previous heat wave was only the beginning, and the next wave of extreme temperatures will be far more terrifying than anything humanity has experienced so far. Chun calmly says he already knew another catastrophic heat wave was coming. The commander then tells Chun Shao that when that time arrives, humanity will need people like him. In fact, humanity's survival itself might eventually depend on awakened individuals like Chun. But Chun immediately shuts down that idea. He says he's no saint and definitely not some great savior of humanity. According to him, anyone who interferes with his peaceful life or stops him from sleeping comfortably in his own bed will simply be eliminated. Then Chun bluntly adds that this world is about to become completely lawless anyway, so he has no reason to fear the military or anyone else anymore. The commander still looks like he wants to argue further, but Chun suddenly cuts him off first and asks what exactly he wants to say. After a brief pause, Chun finally says that if the military is willing to make a deal with him, then maybe he'll consider helping them a little in return. The commander immediately becomes serious. He says that as long as Chun is willing to cooperate with them, even temporarily for just a few days, the military is fully willing to negotiate. Then Chun finally reveals the condition he actually wants. He tells the commander to use military resources, manpower, and equipment to completely transform his apartment building into a true doomsday fortress. If you want more, comment right now.